By the way, if you're finding this free course valuable, but would like some more personalized help with your brand and your career, there are 2 ways you can work with me and the C23 Labs team more closely. First is by purchasing our full 30-hour social media course and being added into our private artist community. If you think this free course is good, this free course is just 14 hours of our full 30-hour course. That goes into way more depth on every topic, with advanced modules on human psychology, a full in-depth model on finding your unique artistic identity from our tattoo artist mentor Laura or Linear Noir, a full in-depth module and course on building your brand identity and visuals from Lalo, in-depth videos on photography and videography techniques, advanced photography and video editing, and more business-related videos like building business systems, time management, and much more. You'll also be invited into our private artist community, where you'll be connected with like-minded tattoo artists who are also working on their social media brand. You can ask questions, see what's been working for other tattoo artists, and watch live replays of our monthly masterclasses that me and Lalo do on specific marketing topics that have been requested by our mentorship students. If you want to learn at your own pace, this is the best next step for you. Click the course link in the description below to learn more about the course. But if you're really serious about transforming your tattoo brand and career this year and want to work more one-on-one with me and all the mentors, you can apply to join our 6-month social media mentorship program. Over 6 months, you'll work directly one-on-one with me to build your marketing funnel, create your content strategy, master your communication skills, and build your business systems. You'll work with Laura, a phenomenal tattoo artist herself, to uncover your unique artistic identity and break through the mindset blocks holding you back. And you'll also work with Lalo, our branding and photography expert, to ensure your brand visuals, tattoo photography, and video editing is world class. We will even plan and create your content strategy for you, set up and create paid ads for you, and we'll meet with you one-on-one every week for 6 months to transform your business and brand together. So if you're really serious about taking your tattoo career to the next level this year, click the first link in the description below, apply by filling out our application form, and we'll be in contact with you very soon. So today I want to talk about a topic that is very misunderstood, what tattoo artists find very fearful, which is sales and selling, especially as an artist and as an introvert. So today I wanted to kind of get over the misconceptions you might have around sales, explain what sales really is, and make you realize that everything that you think makes you bad at sales as an artist actually makes you really good at sales. Once again, as I said, I want to start this video with a surprising statement. Everything that you think that makes you bad at sales actually makes you really good at sales. Now, when I say the word sales or selling, you probably think of an image like this. The Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort banging his head against the mic, right? Charisma, extroversion, manipulation. And that's a word I want to touch on a lot, which is manipulation. I hear that a lot. Well, sales is manipulative. And that's what a lot of people feel around it. When they hear the word sales or salesman, they immediately think of a sense of manipulation, deception, right? Kind of a lack of trust, that immediate fight or flight defensive mode. But sales is only manipulative if either A, you're selling something you don't believe in, or B, you're selling something that the client doesn't want or need. So what sales really is understanding. Sales isn't about convincing, it's about understanding, okay? By definition, convincing is the act of causing someone to believe that something is true or real. So by definition, you could only be convincing your client if they didn't already believe that they wanted a tattoo or want a tattoo, which is not the case, because if they're following you, they're liking your work and they're reaching out to you, then they already like your work. You're not convincing anyone of anything. I'll give you an analogy here. Think of a doctor. When you walk into a doctor's office, do they immediately prescribe you medication? No, of course they don't. They ask you questions, they seek to understand what your problems are, they diagnose you with the problem, and then they offer you a solution. Think about this hypothetical scenario for a second. Let's say you walked into a doctor's office and you had some, really big problems and you wanted to figure out what was wrong with you. And the doctor turns around, he talks about all of his experience, how he went to college, how he has a PhD, all of his awards that he has, all of the clients he's, helped before in the past, without even listening to anything that's wrong with you. No matter how much experience he has and how many awards he has, how confident are you that he would actually fix your problem? Not confident at all, right? Another analogy I like to use, because I hear it a lot with artists, which is therapist, right? Think of a therapist. When you go to a therapist, you know nothing about that therapist, nearly nothing. They ask you questions, deep philosophical questions or psychological questions for 55 minutes of the hour that you have with them. And in the last 5 minutes, they help guide you towards figuring out a solution. They don't even directly give you a solution. They help guide you towards figuring out what the solution is to your problems through your own words, okay? And the reason I like to use therapists a lot is because for most people, they tell their therapist things that they would tell no one else. And that is because there is a deep sense of trust and belief in that therapist. Not because you know them really well, because you feel like they know you and they understand you, okay? And I hear I hear artists say all the time, I'm my client's therapist. Yes, of course you are. But why does the therapy have to start only once they're in the chair? When they really need that therapy, that sense of being listened to, understood, is actually in the sales conversation, to have that trust and belief in you to get in your chair. Another common myth or misconception I hear all the time is, I'm not a salesperson. I'm an artist, I'm not a salesperson. Well, did you feel like a tattoo artist on your first shaky line? No, right? Because sales is a skill set like anything else. It takes time and practice to learn, okay, like tattooing. So I want to let you know that salespeople are actually made, not born. I want to say that again. Salespeople are made, they're not born. No one is born naturally with the skill set of sales. It's a skill set that you learn. In fact, the characteristics that would technically give someone an edge in getting good at sales are all of the characteristics you have as an artist. Heightened emotional intelligence, heightened empathy, a feeling of being able to listen to your clients, right? Understanding, seeing their vision. Okay, that is, in a nutshell, the characteristics that might make someone better at sales, right? Not being extroverted, being loud, being pushy, like you see in The Wolf of Wall Street, right? That misconception. But that's exactly what society tells us, right? Great salespeople are loud, they're extroverted, they're pushy, they're deceptive, okay? But what do clients actually want? Well, what do humans actually want? We want to feel heard, we want to feel safe, we want to feel listened to, we want to feel understood. And congratulations, you're already perfect at this. Because what sales really is a transfer of belief over a bridge of trust, okay? It's you transferring your belief in yourself and your ability to get your client their dream tattoo over a bridge of trust that you've built with them. And the way that you build that trust is not by talking all the time, not by being extroverted, being charismatic, being funny. It's by listening to them, asking them questions. Because the more you talk, the less you're listening. So you cannot build that trust without understanding your client. And the only way you can understand your client is by asking them questions. Because emotional empathy will trump sleazy sales tactics and scripts every time. In fact, the only time you would ever need to use tactics or scripts in sales is, once again, if you're convincing. You're trying to convince someone to buy something they don't need or you don't believe in. That's the only time you need to use tactics. And even if those tactics actually work, okay, even if they do work, how many times have you gone back to a business or a salesperson that has sold you something that you realize you didn't want or need using tactics? Never, right? It's ruined their reputation. So using tactics or scripts don't even mean anything in the long term anyway to build reputation and your brand and your clientele. So once again, you're not convincing anyone of anything. They already want or believe they want a tattoo, okay? The anxiety that you feel around selling and sales comes from you focusing all of your attention inwards. You're constantly thinking about, what if the client likes me? What am I going to say next? When and how am I going to ask for them to buy, okay? I really hope I get this sale. But if you just fully focus and shift your attention outwards onto the client and changing the phrase in your head from I really need the sale to I really need to understand what my client wants, that will get rid of any anxiety that you have around sales because your full attention is outwards on the client, seeking to understand them, and there's no mental brain space left for you to be self-conscious about thinking about what to say next. Because once again, the right thing will come to you in the moment if you're actively listening to your client. You won't need to think about what you need to say next. If you're actually listening and understanding, you will know what to say. For example, do you think that your friend, a doctor or therapist, has any anxiety when they're talking to you and offering you guidance on a big decision, right, and listening to you? No, of course they're not, because they're just present in the moment listening to you. When you're giving advice to your friends, are you anxious about what you're going to say next? No, you're just listening, okay? And you need to have that kind of mindset shift when it comes to sales as well. And this is the mindset shift I want you to have, is that you're not a salesperson, you're a consultant, right? You diagnose like a doctor before you prescribe. You seek to understand rather than seeking to sell your product. Because if you really seek to understand rather than trying to get the sale will naturally come as a byproduct, because most clients don't feel heard or listened to ever by any artists. It's so easy nowadays to get clients because most artists don't even care. You know, as much as you might feel it's saturated, it's actually never been easier to stand out because there's so many people that are commoditized in their way of approaching a client. And this is where I'm getting at, is approaching the client, seeking to understand. That's what sales is. Sales is not as much problem solving as it is problem finding. Because in order to solve a problem, you need to know what the problem is. And in order to know what the problem is, you need to find it. And the only way you can figure out and find it is if you ask questions and you listen to them. So if you have that mindset shift, you shift everything to your client, I promise you, you will never feel anxious about selling again. And you're not selling anything, you're understanding. Now, I just want to touch on one characteristic trait that you really need to have in order to do this, which is you need to have conviction. Okay, conviction in yourself and your abilities and your skill, but also in your conviction of, wanting to get the client the dream result. Because you must genuinely believe that you can get the client the tattoo that they really want and make them happy. Okay, remember, it's a transfer of belief over a bridge of trust. You have to have that belief in yourself. And I know that artists, you're your own biggest critic sometimes. We all feel self-doubt. I don't mean that you have to have 100% conviction in your ability every day. We all have those bad days. But it's not just about having conviction in your own ability. It's also you having conviction that you really genuinely care about your client. Okay, because your job isn't to be the best tattoo artist in the world, right? Your job is to be the best tattoo artist for the client in front of you. What if I genuinely feel that there's a better artist out there for my clients, that is, technically better than me? That's fine. But will that artist give the same attention and time and understanding to your clients? First of all, are they even geographically accessible, right? Are they within the budget? But also as well, I'll give you an analogy here. If I want to get my lawn cut, right, I want someone to mow my lawn. I'm sure there's a world-class lawn cutter out there that can mow my lawn better than anyone else in the world. But all I care about is that the person who cuts my lawn the way that I want it cut, right? I don't need it to be the best lawn cutter in the world. And it's the same for you with your clients. Your clients don't need you to be the best artist in the world. They just need to be happy with the results. If you can do that, then you should have 100% conviction in yourself, okay? And when you do feel that self-doubt, the best thing you can do is go back, read your client conversations, read your testimonials, watch videos of your clients happy, remind yourself of the impact you've made on all of your previous clients, okay? And remember as well, if anyone has come back to you more than once, right, they value you and they value everything that you do. And the real kicker here, the real way that you'll never feel anxious again about selling, is be willing to give advice to someone that doesn't benefit you in the short term, because you don't sell to someone you can't serve. If you talk to a client, you seek to understand them, and you realize, hey, they want a tattoo or they want an artist relationship that I can't give them, be okay with passing that to someone else. Because if you do that, then you're genuinely in the mindset of, I'm going to help this client make the best decision for them. I'll give you a great story of a client that I had that did this and actually really benefited them and their reputation. So I had a client who was a realism artist, a very talented realism artist, but really hated portraits, was not very confident in family portraits. And they had a client come to them and ask for a family portrait, and they were honest. They said, I'm a realism artist, but I'm really not comfortable in family portraits. I'm going to pass you off to my friend who I know will do a great job. So the client went to the friend, got the family portrait. Now, what happened was, that client had 2 or 3 friends that wanted realism tattoos. Did that client refer his friends to the family portrait artist? No. He actually referred the realism clients to the original artist who didn't do the family portrait because of the honesty and care. And he felt like the client felt like the artist had their best interest at heart. So he actually got referrals from a person that didn't even become his client because of the honesty. So if you really seek to understand your client, number one, you won't feel anxious because you're not selling anything. You're not convincing anyone of anything, if you remember. But number two, your word of mouth and reputation will spread either way because people will know you're honest, genuine, and that you genuinely care. So on that note, that wraps up this video. I just wanted to do a quick rant about selling and sales and hopefully help you overcome some of the stigmas, the anxiety that you have around selling, and make you realize, as I said, everything that you think makes you bad at sales, listening, empathy, emotional, being quiet, being introverted, makes you really, really good at sales. And you're not a salesperson, you're a consultant. And if you shift that perspective and you seek to understand your client, the sales will come as a byproduct. So in today's video, I want to talk a little bit more, rant a little bit more about your client's buying psychology, human psychology and behaviors, and how people actually make decisions when it comes to buying something, which is not what you think. You know what, let's get straight into it. I'm going to start with a quick example of an ideal client. Let's say you have a client or an inquiry or someone who's following you. They have all the money in the world. They love your work. They have been sitting on an idea for years and they love that idea. Why have they not booked the tattoo yet? Right, it's confusing. If they love your work, they have all the money in the world, they know exactly what they want. What's left to do? Just get the tattoo. Easier said than done. The reason that person hasn't booked the tattoo yet is because they have a deep underlying internal fear in their mind that is holding them back. It's nothing to do with you. And it stems from a psychological concept that actually won a Nobel Prize called loss aversion. So I'm going to explain loss aversion through a quick kind of experiment with you. I'm going to ask you 2 quick questions. Would you rather win $1,000 guaranteed, so I give you $1,000 right now, guaranteed, or take a 50-50 chance at winning $2,000 or winning nothing? Okay, raise your hand if you would take the $1,000. Now, most of you watching this probably raised your hand. Second question then, would you rather lose $1,000 guaranteed, so I take $1,000 from you guaranteed, or take a 50-50 chance at losing $2,000, so double, or losing nothing? Okay? Most of you would take the risk of losing double to lose nothing. Now, statistically, these questions are the same mathematically, right? You either have a 100% chance of winning or double, or losing and double. But what loss aversion explains and what that analogy explains is that we feel the pain of losing something twice as hard as the equivalent joy we get of gaining something. So in plain English, losing $1,000 guaranteed hurts twice as much as the joy that you would get from gaining $1,000. So we avoid losses, okay, more than we seek gains. And how that relates to your client psychology and buying psychology is through the gains and losses that they perceive when buying a tattoo, right? So the gains would be, I'm going to feel more confident. I'm going to have this beautiful tattoo. I'm going to have a great experience with the artist, right? I have all the money. I'm ready. Those are all gains. These are all things that they would gain or desires, reason that they would desire the tattoo. And the losses are the internal fears that they have. What if it scabs? What if I hate it in 5 years? What if my family, co-workers, friends judge me for it? Okay? What if the artist doesn't listen to me, etc.? These are all losses. So reasons that they would feel a loss of getting a tattoo, or fears. So the analogy I'm going to use from now on, instead of gains and losses, is fears and desires. And I'm going to show you on the screen here somewhere a scale that kind of explains in visual terms the difference between the fears and the losses. As you can see here, the desires, so the gains, the desires are all these little pebbles. These are all little reasons why they would want the tattoo. Feel more confident, good experience with the artist. They know exactly what they want. They have money saved up. You know, they're going to have a beautiful tattoo on their arm, whatever. And you can see on the left here, this big, massive rock, which is the big fear, right? What if I hate it? What if my family, friends, coworkers judge me for it? I can't handle the physical pain. What if my artist doesn't listen, right? What if it scabs? All of these things. And as you can see, as mentioned, the fear weighs twice as much as the desire. That's why it's a big rock and little pebbles. And what most artists try to do in their content and their marketing is create more little pebbles to tip the scale, right? Look at this flash I did. Look at this giveaway. Look at this discount, etc., right? But what happens is you're just adding tiny little pebbles and the scale's not moving. Whereas if you just simply removed the big rock, the fear, the scale would naturally tip because there's nothing left but desire, okay? There's nothing left for them but for them to be excited. And a lot of you might feel when this happens that they're way more excited than they were. That's not the case. There's just no fear. So all that's left is for them to be excited. So what you want to do in your marketing and in your sales is to figure out what that pain point is, what that hesitation, what that fear is. What are they scared of? Why have they been sitting on that tattoo for years, right? And if you remove that, you help them overcome that fear, they will naturally buy because all that's left is for them to be excited. By the way, if you're enjoying my content and you feel like you're learning something and you want to kind of get more personalized help with your marketing, your social media, psychology, client sales conversations, there's a link in the description, the first link below. You can actually apply to work with me one-on-one. So you'll get access to 40 plus hours of content on all of the stuff I talk about in detail. You'll have direct access to me in the DMs for any time. You can send me your content, sales conversations. And I do live calls every week where you can jump on, ask questions, and be part of a community that's, trying to figure out the same thing, which is the marketing side. So yeah, if that's interesting to you, you want to work with me a little bit more personally and get some more personalized help on your social media marketing and sales skills, you can click the first link in the description below and you can apply and we'll talk soon. So remember, in marketing and sales, your client already wants a tattoo from you. They wouldn't be following you, engaging with your work, reaching out if they didn't. So your job in sales and marketing is to remove mental barriers rather than constantly creating more desire. And I want to use that analogy again of the hypothetical scenario of that client. Let's say that client eventually does book after 1 year of more thinking. What actually happened in that year of thinking? Did they need a year to think about it? No, what happened is they had this fear in their mind that they were sitting on for years. And then after another year, on month 12, they eventually heard something or saw something or spoke to someone that helped them overcome that fear or shift their perception or perspective around that fear or hesitation or question that they had, and then they booked, okay? What I'm getting at is your clients don't need time to make a decision, a buying decision. They need information. And some clients take longer to come across that information. So what we're trying to do in our marketing and in our sales is to figure out, first of all, what they need to hear from asking our clients, but then secondly, talking about that in our marketing. So that year of thinking goes through a week to a day. Because remember, they don't need time to think about it. They just are missing a certain part of information. And some people, it takes longer for them to hear that or see that or shift that perspective than others. That's why some clients book straight away and some clients sit on it for years. And the reason is because there are 6 core beliefs that people need to kind of check off in their mind in order to be confident in buying. Those are doubt, desire, trust, money, support, and fear. And you can't have 4 or 5 of them checked off. They all need to be checked off. And the reason for that is because we are, as humans, we're very scared of making the wrong decision, okay? It stems from what's called identity threat. Because what identity threat basically explains is that people don't want to make a bad decision because if they admit that they were wrong, it will damage our self-image and our self-worth, right? If we make a decision and then we admit it was wrong, we're basically admitting that it's a reflection of poor judgment from us, which hurts our identity and our ego. So most people would rather make no decision than make a decision, because you're avoiding being wrong. That's why a lot of people don't chase their dreams, right? Because they would rather not chase their dreams and not be wrong or fail, then chase their dreams, okay? And it stems back to these core beliefs. The reason they all need to be checked off is because if they're all checked off, there's basically no excuses left in their mind to not buy. So they will feel that they're rationally making a really good judgment on this tattoo if they're all checked off. And one of them not being checked off is enough to hold them back. Remember, fears outweigh desires. So let's go through these core beliefs one by one and let me explain a little bit more in detail about what they actually mean. So the first one is doubt. They need to feel that they can't solve it alone. And for you, that's fine. That's already checked off because they're not a tattoo artist. Of course, they can't solve it alone. They can't tattoo. The next is desire. They need to genuinely want the tattoo. This is also checked off for you, okay? Because your followers are following you because they like your work. They're reaching out. They're engaging. So this is already checked off. Contrary to popular belief, this one's already checked off. But most artists are focusing on this for their whole marketing strategy. The next then is money. They need to have the resources, but most importantly, they need to feel like they're making a sound financial decision. And then support, trust, and fear, these are kind of all interconnected. They're all reasons that could be the big rock, hesitation and fear, etc. For example, support. Do they have support from their friends, family, coworkers, right? So external judgment. Trust. Do they trust the artist? Not just your work, but do they trust you'll listen to them? Do they trust that you will get on really well? Do you trust that you'll have the artistic vision that they're looking for, right? Do you trust that they won't judge you, etc.? And then fear, which is obviously all of the irrational, internal, kind of unique hesitations. I'm scared of pain. I'm not sure if I'll like it in 5 years. What if it scabs? Because they've heard, horror stories, etc. So support, trust, and fear are all core beliefs that could be that big rock, as we mentioned earlier in this video. So I want to talk a little bit more in depth about money, because I hear this all the time. My clients are cheap. My clients don't understand price versus value. Why are all of my DMs asking about the price first, right? I'm not asking about my art. Let me explain psychologically why. Firstly, when it comes to budget and pricing, okay, your clients, they just have an irrational perception on budget. They don't actually want the cheapest tattoo, because if they did want the cheapest tattoo, they would have gone to the cheapest artist already, okay? They would go get a sleeve and hepatitis for 50 bucks in the mom's basement, right? But they haven't done that. So it's not that they want the cheapest. They want to get the best tattoo they can possibly get with the perceived budget that they have in their mind. And I want to touch on budget as well, because most clients, their budget is a number that they've pulled out of their ass, right? It's either a number that they have in their pocket right then and there, or most importantly, it's usually a number that they're comfortable in spending. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a client who has $2,000, right, in their account, but they tell you their budget is $500. Why do they do that? The reason is not because their budget is $500, because we know that they have $2,000 to spend if they really wanted to, but because $500 in their mind is a number that they would be comfortably willing to spend, right? The key word here is comfortable. They would be willing to see that $500 go without it feeling uncomfortable. Now, if they were to spend $1,500 of that $2,000, now that's scary, right? That's uncomfortable, because that's 75% of their actual money, okay? So what you have to understand is that most people's budget can be higher than it is. They just don't want to choose a number that is uncomfortable in spending, and they stick to that comfort zone. And what your sales and your marketing can do is create that gap in their mind between price and value, make them realize that the experience that they have with you is so much more than just a finished piece, which allows them to trust you more, which then allows them to start getting a bit more uncomfortable in their mind about how much they're willing to spend. For example, going back to a previous video that I recorded, you should check it out if you haven't, talking about giving your client or your inquiry advice that might not help you in the short term. For example, you should go to another artist, or you should wait, etc. In this scenario, an example of a conversation that could be had is like, hey, you mentioned that you really want this in your tattoos, you want to emulate XYZ. You say you have this budget now, but as you mentioned, this is just a number that you have in your pocket at the moment. I would highly recommend that you save up for a couple of months and go to an artist that is more expensive, but go to the artist that you really want to go to. Whether it's me or not, doesn't matter. I really want to make sure that you make a good decision, because this is on you for life, and you don't want to just get a tattoo now to gratify yourself rather than waiting and being proud of it, okay? And that is what they need to hear. And you can use your sales conversations and your marketing to say that inadvertently, right? And that alone will shift their perception about budget, timing, patience. And also, if you're the one who shifts that perspective, they trust you and then they're willing to uncomfortably spend more with you. I also hear a lot from artists too at the moment, and I've seen it, why are 80% of my DMs asking about the price? And no, they're not trying to be annoying, and I'll explain why. There's three main reasons that people start with asking about the price, right? All of them stem into this basic irrational belief. They don't understand the difference between price and value just yet, okay? The first reason that people ask about the price first is because money connected the whole world. I'll explain what I mean. Back in the day, thousands of years ago, people used to trade, right? So if I had chickens and I wanted your cow, I could say, hey, I could give you 10 chickens for that cow, right? That's how we would exchange things. But what happened was eventually, if I'm offering you 10 chickens for your cow, but you don't want any chickens, we can't trade because you don't want my chickens. So people started not trading anymore, and it didn't work. So what happened was money was created as that intermediary, right? The thing in the middle. And basically everyone agreed that money has value, and that allowed people to trade again, because I could say, hey, I'll give you this money for that cow, and then you can use that money to buy what you want, because you don't want my chickens. I can use that money, or the person can use that money to buy what they want, okay? So money became a thing, and it connected the whole trading world again, because people basically universally agreed that it has a form of value. What I'm getting at is, when people don't know anything about something, for example, tattooing, they don't know about the design process, they don't know about the experience, they don't know about all these different things, they turn to the only common feature that they know is deemed valuable, which is money. Okay, because that's all they know. They don't have enough information. For example, when you have a plumber or an electrician come to your house, what are the first two questions you have in your mind? How long is it going to take, and how much is it going to cost? Okay, it's natural, it's in our nature. So that is the first main reason people ask about the price first, is because they don't know enough about tattooing to ask anything else. And they're relating how much your tattoos are worth based on money, because they know that money has value, and they can compare it to other things in their life that cost the same amount, okay? So your marketing and your sales, we need to shift their perspective and make them realize how much more valuable everything about you is, okay? Which we'll get into. The second reason is because they've had an expectation set in their mind from previous experiences. For example, they've gone to an artist before and they've been a certain price. They still don't know much about tattooing, so when they go to you, they're anchoring your price of the previous artist, okay? It's called the anchoring bias. The first piece of information we get on a topic dictates how we perceive everything else. For example, if you reach out to an artist for a tattoo and they say it's going to be $500, and then they reach out to you then, and you say it's going to be $1,000, they're going to perceive you as expensive because the first guy said 500. Now, if they reach out to an artist, the first artist, and that first artist, instead of saying 500, said $2,000, then they reached out to you and you said $1,000, now in their mind, you're perceived as less expensive, right? As cheap, because they've anchored their kind of judgment on what's expensive or what, if you're expensive or cheap, based on what the first artist said, okay? So that's the main reason. Previous experiences. The other previous experience is that they've reached out to loads of artists about the price, and all of these artists have replied with a price, okay? What happens then is that reinforces their behavior to ask for a price. For example, if a child puts their hand on a fire and gets burned, that reinforces their behavior not to put their hand on the fire again. So when a client doesn't know what to do, ask about the price, and then gets loads of prices back, that reinforces that that's the right thing to do. Oh, when I ask for a price, I get a price back. So that's why they're asking you for a price. Okay? So that's the other reason. What happens then is, if you also reply back straight away with the price, you become a commodity. Okay? So that's why we want to guide our sales conversation away from the price in a strategic way to show that you have more value, which you'll see in the next video. And then the third reason is that your content, your brand, doesn't have enough authority or perceived value. So they're looking at your content, they don't see you as an authority, they don't see you as an expert, they don't see you as a professional based on whatever kind of content you're making or the organization. For example, we all see some artist where you go on their page and you can tell they're expensive, you can tell that they're a unique experience. So you're already kind of preparing in your mind, if you're a client, that they're going to cost a lot of money. So that is the third reason. You're not building up enough of an authority or an expertise in your content for people to feel a bit anxious about asking you for the price, right? Because they don't see you as the expert yet. So yeah, basically in a nutshell, in this video, I wanted to explain why your clients might check every box and you might check every box, but they don't buy. The psychology, the real psychology behind how people buy, which is fears and hesitations and loss aversion. Also, why people think so much about money, or why people ask about money, or why people can feel like they're being cheap, which is just a misconception of budget and value. And yeah, how people make irrational judgments all the time, which they think are logical, and how you can use that in your marketing and in your sales conversations to stand out above every other artist. So today in this video, I want to talk about how you can navigate your sales conversations in extreme detail. So in the past couple of videos that you hopefully watched, if you haven't, definitely check them out before, we talk about overcoming the manipulative stigma that you have around selling and sales. And secondly, we talk about your clients' buying psychology. Now I want to take all of the information that I've taught you in the other videos and turn it into a really good in-depth conversation, sales conversation, and how to guide that conversation, what questions to use, when to pick up on hesitations. We're going to talk about all of that in this video. So the first thing I want to say is, going back to artist and introvert superpower, is not wanting to speak, right? Not wanting to do the selling, and we would rather just listen. The beautiful thing is, the best sales is 90% listening and 10% talking. Now, this is not some number that I've pulled out of my ass. This is the number that I have come to the conclusion of, and other high-level salespeople, when analyzing thousands of sales conversations. The most effective conversations that ended up in a sale were 90% listening from the salesperson and 10% talking. Okay, so that's what you're naturally good at, right? Remember, your superpower as an artist is that you don't want to sell, right? You don't want to talk about anything. And great selling is listening to the client and letting the client come to their conclusion themselves, right? Coming to your conclusion themselves. So on that note, what I'm going to teach you in this video is not scripts, not set scripts, it's frameworks. And the reason for that is, as you probably know, every client conversation goes a completely different route. Okay, so if you kind of confine yourself to scripts, that's where the anxiety will come back in. Oh, they said something that's off script, what do I say next, right? No. The art of sales is listening and understanding your client. So I promise you, with these frameworks mixed with actively listening, the right thing will come to you in the moment to say, but only if you're actively listening and are present. So that's why we'll talk about frameworks, not scripts. So the form of sales that I like to do, the form of questions, the frameworks that I like to follow, all stem from something what's called Socratic questioning. So Socratic questioning stems from Socrates. If anyone doesn't know who Socrates was, he was a Greek philosopher who basically stood in the middle of the main Athens square and would stop people and strike up kind of discussions or conversations about things like leadership, virtue, what do you think of love, what do you think of politics, etc. What Socrates would do is, once he got a very strong opinion said by the person with him, he would then ask them question after question and dig deeper and deeper and deeper until eventually that person realized that their opinion was kind of based on nothing, and that they might have realized that they were wrong about a lot of things. Okay, and the reason it's called Socratic questioning is because Socrates never directly argued or discussed, right? He actually just asked people questions until they eventually came to the realization, after digging into their own mind, of how irrational they were being. Now, fortunately, Socrates would be a great salesperson in this day and age, but asking, powerful people question after question and making them start to feel stupid with their own words doesn't get you clients, it gets you. So in this video, I'm not going to go into extreme detail on going through hundreds of client conversations. I'm going to teach you the main frameworks and the best questions that I've seen you can ask through Socratic questioning, and explaining in detail why these questions are so powerful, based on a lot of things that you've already probably learned in other videos. One of the most powerful questions you can ask a client or an inquiry, which is, what stopped you from getting this tattoo sooner? And we're talking about someone who has explained to you that they've been sitting on this tattoo idea for years or months, okay? You want to figure out what is really stopping them. Why have they been sitting on that idea for years if they really like it and they have money? What this question does is, it stops your client from saying a superficial answer and really getting into their own mind and saying out loud the real deep fear or hesitation or underlying question that they have around tattooing the process, their confidence, etc., that has been stopping them from making the commitment. And the reason we want to do that is, if you have that knowledge, then you can guide the conversation towards talking about that in more depth and making them realize that that fear is a bit irrational, and they're making it scarier than it seems, etc., and helping them overcome that fear and gain that confidence, because that is the main thing that's holding them back. If you remember from the previous video, there's fears and desires, and the fear is way more. So If you figure out what that is and you guide the conversation down that route, right? You hear that and you say, okay, let's dig deeper on this. They'll start to overcome it. They'll shift their perspective, and that will get you the sale more than anything else, more than talking about design, placement straight away, okay? That's why I love that question, because it really forces your client to talk about their biggest fear when it comes to getting a tattoo. The goal of these type of questions is to uncover what we call in sales objections. So in plain English, objections are reasons people would object to buying, right? Reasons, obstacles in people's way that they need to get over to buy, right? Stemming from the core beliefs again, as mentioned in the other video. But the goal of these questions is to figure out what that big objection, that big rock that's in their way for them to have the bravery to commit is. And just going back to the 6 core beliefs that people need in order to buy, as we spoke about in the previous video, which once again I would recommend you watch if you haven't, the 3 big rocks or objections or fears that people could have stem from these core beliefs, right? Support. Do they have support in their lives from family members, friends, co-workers, etc.? Trust. Do they have full trust in the artist, not just your work, as mentioned, but trust in you as a human, resonation with you as a human, and also trust that you're going to listen to what they really want and understand them. And then, of course, fear, which is the unique fears that people have about physical pain, about regretting it in 5 years. Once again, external judgment from others about what if it scabs from, bad stories that they've heard. So objections that people have in their mind stem from these. And objections are usually, they kind of sit as like a sentence in their mind. So an example of an objection that people are saying in their mind for support is, well, what if my coworkers, family, boss don't like it and I lose my job, or they judge me, or they perceive me as different? That's an objection, right? That's a sentence that they're saying in their mind that you want to figure out what that is through the sales conversation. For trust, it could be, what if, I go to an artist who doesn't listen to me and I get a horrible tattoo like I had with my previous artist, right? So they had a bad previous experience. Because of that, they don't trust artists as much, or maybe they've just been fucked over in the past by friends or family, right? So they just don't trust people in general. But that's the sentence, the objection, What if it turns out wrong, or what if they don't listen to me and I get a horrible tattoo? That's the objection in their mind. And then for fear, it could be anything. What if I can't handle the pain? What if I regret it in 5 years? What if it scabs like my friends? What if my artist is a horrible person, right? All of these things. These are all objections or sentences that they have in their mind. And the goal of this Socratic questioning is to guide the conversation to where you eventually hear one of these sentences. They say it, and then you dig deeper on that and you help them realize that that's not the case with you, or that the pain isn't that bad, or that they've been sitting on this idea for years, and if they still have it, then of course they're not going to regret it in 5 years. What their real fear is that the judgment that they'll have from their friends, right? So you need to guide the conversation that way and help them realize that they're just being a little bit scared and irrational, which will give them the confidence and the trust in you, because you're the one who made them realize to buy with you. You're not selling anything, remember. You're not convincing anyone of anything. You're helping them convince themselves by questioning, by Socratic questioning. So once again, I don't like scripts, I like checklists. So here are the 4 things you should psychologically know about the client as a 4-part checklist that you want to check off. You're going to check off some of these before others, because every client conversation goes a different way, but you want to just guide the conversation and start to check these off one by one. By the way, if you're enjoying my content and you feel like you're learning something and you want to kind of get more personalized help with your marketing, your social media, psychology, client sales conversations, there's a link in the description, the first link below. You can actually apply to work with me one-on-one. So you'll get access to 40 plus hours of content on all of the stuff I talk about in detail. You'll have direct access to me in the DMs for any time. You can send me your content, sales conversations. And I do live calls every week where you can jump on, ask questions, and be part of a community that's, trying to figure out the same thing, which is the marketing side. So yeah, if that's interesting to you, you want to work with me a little bit more personally and get some more personalized help on your social media marketing and sales skills, you can click the first link in the description below and you can apply, and we'll talk soon. First thing on the checklist is fear. Okay, we want to figure out what the fear is. What is the biggest thing holding my clients back from committing? Then value. Do they understand the difference between price and value? Emotion. Do I know what's driving them to want this particular tattoo? What is the significance for them for this tattoo? And then ideal artist. What are they really looking for in an artist? Other than work, what do they need to see in an artist to trust them the most? And once again, some people are going to open up the conversation asking you about the price, right? And that's where you want to navigate that conversation away from price versus value, so you can check off that value part of the checklist, okay? Some people will reach out and tell you their deepest, darkest fears straight away. So you want to overcome that fear first, right? You want to check that off, okay? Some people will tell you they've had a bad experience in the past with artists. So you want to ask them another great Socratic question is, what made you reach out to me in particular? What are you looking for in an artist, okay? The reason I love what made you reach out to me in particular is if you feel the conversation isn't going anywhere, or you feel like they're starting to get defensive, or you know that they've had a bad experience in the past from what they said, you want to recenter that conversation back to them saying and reminding themselves out loud as to why they reached out to you. What do they value in you? Why did they reach out in the first place? Because that gets them excited again. That gets them realizing, oh yeah, I do want to talk to this person. So that's how you can use that question to check off artists. What are they looking for in an artist, okay? When people say, yeah, I've been waiting, what's been stopping you from getting this tattoo? Oh, I've just been waiting to find the right artist. Oh, okay, right artist. What in particular are you looking for in an artist? Okay, and you start to figure out what that is, and then you can paint yourself as that ideal artist, okay? If someone wants an artist to be, funny or outgoing or non-judgmental, you can act then, once they've said that, in a funny, calm, non-judgmental way. If they want someone to talk about deep philosophical things, and you like that too, then you start to guide your client interaction that way, right? But you need to know what type of artist they're looking for so you can play the part. And if you're not that part and you don't want to do the tattoo, etc., you pass them off to someone else. That's how you'll never feel like you're selling, as I said. But once again, that is the sales checklist that I always follow in a conversation. So not script, the checklist. Do I know their fear? Do they understand price versus value? Okay. Do I know the emotional driving them behind this tattoo? Like, do I know why they want this tattoo and the significance? And then do I know what they're really looking for in an artist, to trust an artist? So the best way to guide this conversation is obviously not to continuously ask these questions one by one, because then they will feel like they're being interrogated, right? You want it to feel like a natural conversation. And the way that you do that is you act naturally, right? You don't just ask them conversation over conversation like a police investigation. So what I like to teach artists and what I like to use myself personally is what's called the ACA framework. So your reply to a client is going to contain ACA. So A, the first A is acknowledge what they said. C, compliment a characteristic trait of them or compliment their idea. And then A is ask a Socratic guiding question. So we don't ask the question straight away over and over again, because that will feel, once again, like an interrogation. We want to acknowledge what they said. We want to compliment so it feels like a natural conversation. And then we slip in that question so it feels like it's just naturally flowing that way. I'll give you an example of what I would reply to if someone said, hey, I want this design, what would be the price? Now, remember, we want to make sure that they understand the difference between price and value. So we want to steer that conversation away from the price and more towards the value that you bring, which is your understanding of them, your genuine care and interest in their idea. And then from that moment on, they will start to really understand, okay, this is why they might be more expensive. So how to use the ACA in that reply. So I would say, hey, John, of course I can give you a price for this, right? So we're acknowledging what they said. We don't want to just avoid that conversation, right? Because they're going to feel like you're avoiding. They'll see that. So we want to acknowledge that they asked for the price. Hey, John, of course I can give you a price for this. I just need to ask you 2 quick questions to give you the most accurate one. Okay, so now we're saying basically the Socratic questions that I'm about to ask you, it's to give you a more accurate price. So now John is more open to answering your questions in detail because he feels that it's for you to give him a better price. Okay, now obviously we're going to steer it away, but you acknowledge what he said so that he feels heard. Then you want to compliment him or his idea. So here we'll compliment his idea, for example. By the way, this is a beautiful XYZ idea. How did you come up with this idea? And then we ask that Socratic guiding question, right? How did you come up with this idea? The reason I like to do it this way is because it feels natural. So you're saying, hey, yeah, I'd love to give you a price. I just need to ask you 2 quick questions. And then you kind of go off on a tangent. By the way, this is a lovely idea. Like, I'm getting sidetracked, even though we know what we're doing. Getting sidetracked. How did you come up with this? And then John starts to talk about how he came up with it, which gives you the ability to check off that emotional significance, okay? And then when you get a good reply from John, if it's superficial, you want to touch a bit more in depth on what he said. Let's say, oh, I just think it's cool. Okay, amazing. Yeah, I think it's amazing, cool too. I'm curious to know what in particular you find the coolest, right? So you want to dig a bit deeper, right? Because he's not giving us a good answer. And then he'll open up, okay? Then once we've checked off that emotional significance in this example, we can say, oh, wow, well, you've clearly put a lot of thought into this design, so we're acknowledging what he said. I really admire that you take a lot of time to make decisions well. So now we're complimenting a characteristic that he has. We're also, labeling him with the characteristic trait we want him to have in the future of this conversation, which is you think about your decisions well. So you don't go to the cheapest, right? You're going to understand price versus value. So we're lining him up subconsciously to act in accordance with the person we want him to be. And we're also complimenting him. So as we said, wow, you clearly put a lot of thought into this. I admire that you take a lot of time to make your decisions. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this. How long have you had this idea? And then he says, oh, 2 years. Okay, boom. Now we're going to get into the fear. Okay, wow, 2 years. I completely relate to that. I always think it's better to make a longer decision rather than a quick one. You know, what stopped you from getting this tattoo 2 years ago or a year ago? You know, why are you only reaching out now? Okay, boom, now we're getting into the fear conversation. We're figuring out, right? So you can see we're listening to what they're saying. We're naturally guiding that conversation using the ACA so it feels like a natural conversation, right? So we're not just interrogating, and we're checking off these bits one by one. So then when you eventually drop the price at the end of that DM conversation, right, for example, which you should drop the price because remember, you promised you would and he asked for it. What happens though is that John is having such a good time talking about his idea and talking to you, he forgets to even ask about the price. So the beautiful thing is when you recenter the conversation back to the price, they trust you even more because they're like, oh wow, they could have just avoided that, but they brought it back. So then when you drop the price, the last thing that's going to be checked off, for example, in that scenario, is price versus value. They're now going to value you more because of that conversation you've had with them. They're going to feel understood and listened to. They're going to trust you. So then when you drop that expensive price in comparison to some cheap people, the question in John's mind is not, I can't afford this. The question is, how can I afford this? How can I find the money to go with this artist? Because this is my artist. So that's how you can use Socratic questioning and the ACA framework to make your clients come to the realization that you are the right artist for them without selling anything. And I think I've gone on long enough on this video, so I'll leave it there. But that's how you can use Socratic questioning and your client's own psychology against them to guide that conversation to what you really want it to be. And once again, you're not convincing anyone of anything. You're not selling anything, right? You're just seeking to understand your client, and through that, they will trust you. All right, guys. So the next part of this course is, of course, the sales frameworks for actual conversations. So you've just learned about the sales state of mind, the sales philosophy you need to have, and hopefully I've shifted your perspective around how you see sales and what real sales, ethical sales really is. And secondly, how your clients think, how they psychologically make decisions and judgments, as we've talked earlier in the course and recently with loss aversion, and what is holding them back, etc. And also explain psychologically why they have certain objections or rebuttals or fears around money, trust, etc. Okay, so what we're going to talk about now in this video is how to actually turn all of this knowledge and all of these new leads that you've gotten, because remember, you're creating content now, you're running ads, right? You're getting new followers through all the conversion mechanisms I've showed you as well. Okay, and now you're getting DMs, emails, you're booking consultations, etc., which we'll get into. How do you actually turn those conversations from a conversation to a actual paying client? And this is a real skill in itself. And a lot of artists completely neglect this. You know, they think that the job is done once someone reaches out, but marketing and sales are one entity. They're part of one system. You know, you could be the best marketer in the world, but if you don't know how to speak to a human being, you're not going to make any sales. And vice versa, if you're the best salesperson in the world, if no one knows who you are, there's no one and nothing to sell to. Okay. So here's what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to go into the introduction and the theory of why we do it this way. So I have a certain strategy and a certain framework and a certain way of questioning that I use, etc. And I'm going to explain the theory of why I use this psychologically and practically. Okay. Then we're going to go into the conversational framework. So the ACA and the 4-part checklist, which we'll get into. You've already learned a little bit about the 4-part checklist in the previous video. Okay. Then I'm going to show you 3 example conversations with a different order of me following these frameworks. Okay. This will all make sense further in the video, but I'm going to show you 3 example conversations of me talking to a potential client to them buying. Okay. Then we're going to go into objection theory. So objections is a sales term which basically means reasons that people would object to buying from you. Okay, that could be due to a lack of money, a fear around spending that money, or a lack of trust with you, or a fear around something that's happened previously, or a bad story they've heard. These are all reasons that they wouldn't buy. There are certain psychologically that is stopping them from buying, and that is what's called an objection. So we're going to go around objection theory and how to understand why people have certain objections and what to do when they have them. And then I'm going to show you 3 objection answer examples, or like role plays stemming from these conversations on where a client gives us an objection and we overcome that objection, which is what we say in sales, which is like, hey, I'm scared about this. And we help them realize that they don't need to be scared about this. And then they buy. Okay. And then we'll go into the objection frameworks I use. Okay. To know exactly how to handle any kind of objection that arises, no matter how specific it is, because you'll get some very peculiar objections further in some of the conversations. Then I'm going to show you some of the follow-up strategies I use as well. This is another big problem. I see a lot of tattoo artists have terrible follow-up strategies. Hey, did you see this last match? Or hey, bumping this, or no one's going to reply to that because they've already ghosted you. You're just going to make them feel twice as bad. I'm going to show you the follow-up strategies I use to actually get a conversation going again. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go through analyzing and improving your conversations. So reviewing your conversations, I'm going to show you some AIs that you can use to attach to your calls if you're having Zoom consultations to take notes for you. I'm also going to show you a tracking sheet to fill out the objections. You've actually seen this tracking sheet already in this course in the paid ads section. Okay. So you're going to have the full shebang here. You're going to know exactly why we're doing this, how to do it, how to overcome any objections, how to get clients to or inquiries to reply again, and then how to analyze and improve your own conversations to continuously get better. Because remember, the better you are at sales, the less conversations you need to close a client, right? If you're really, really good at sales, every 5 messages, you're maybe turning 3 of them into a booking. If you're not really good at sales, maybe every 10 messages, you're turning 1, right? So in the latter example, in order for me to get another client, I need to get 10 more messages. For the previous example, in order for me to get 3 more clients, I need 5 more messages, right? So you see that the better you are at sales, the less pressure there is on marketing to generate inquiries, okay? And the better your system is for everything, the less if you involve it. Okay, so continuing on. Introduction. All right. So as I mentioned, you're creating content, you're running ads, you're getting new followers, and through the conversion mechanisms, now you're getting DMs. Okay. And this is the part where most artists get wrong. By the way, 2 things. First of all, I have my headphones on. I know it looks a bit funny, but it's really loud at the moment. And also I really need to focus on this video because it's one of the most important. Secondly, I'm using the Google Doc again because I really don't want to get too fancy with this. And I didn't want to leave any important information out. So yeah, sorry about the ugly visuals, but it was really important for me to cover this in depth, because if you understand this, I promise you it will change the way that you do business. Okay, so this is the part where most artists get wrong, right? They either treat their DMs like a quote machine, meaning you just keep giving out quotes when someone asks straight away, or you don't reply fast enough, okay? Because you don't think that's important. But this part is as important as your marketing. As I mentioned, right? It's one entity. No one is going to buy from you if you don't know how to converse with them, okay? And this stems from the 3% buyer's rule. So the biggest issue I see tattoo artists make is that they assume that someone is not serious or is a time waster if they don't immediately throw them money in their face. But the issue is only 3% of the total market of your audience is ready to buy right now. Okay, so as you can see here from the 3% buyers rule, 3% here at the top of the pyramid are active buyers, 7% are intending to change. Okay, so this means that these people they really want a tattoo, but there's 1 or 2 things holding them back, hence objections. And then this 30% is they really want a tattoo, but they have not enough pain to act, which means that they have a lot of desire, they really want a tattoo, but it's not too important for them right now, right? Usually from not being able to find the right artist, not really knowing what they want, or knowing what they want, but not being too certain in themselves to commit to it, etc. So great marketing turns 30% into the 7%, and great sales turns 7% into the 3%, right? Because the difference between these guys is the 7% have 1 or 2 objections or reasons that they would be scared or hesitant about committing to the tattoo, okay? These people probably have 1 or 2 objections, and they have a couple of other things in their life that they desire more. Hence why continuous branding, marketing, and building trust is how they slowly go up into the 7%. And the issue is most tattoo artists are fighting over these guys. So if this person is ready to go and buy and they reach out to 5 artists and they book with 1 of them, the other 4 artists will say, oh, they were time wasters. But were they? No, because they bought from someone else. So the main thing is, if you're really good at sales and you have a good system and you have good conversational skills, then you can actually create your own little market of 3% buyers, because you turn these time wasters or hesitant people into committed, excited, trustworthy people. Hence the 3%, but they're in your 3%, not other people, because you're the one who helped them get there. Does that make sense? So that's why it's really important to focus on your conversational skills just as much as your marketing. Okay, maybe not as much, but yeah, actually as much, really, to be honest, because it's going to make your marketing much easier. Okay, so that's just a quick breakdown of the 3% buyers rule. And as I mentioned, sales and marketing are two sides of the same coin. They work in unison. Treat them as one entity. This is in essence what creates the perception of your brand, as Lalo has talked about before. The whole experience from start to finish, from the first time they know about you, so entering your funnel, to when they leave your studio after paying. Okay, so today I'm going to give you the exact system we teach our students for handling DMs and consultations. Okay, this is no unethical high pressure sales tactics, just deep human psychology and deep understanding. Okay, it's about turning your DMs into a conversation that naturally leads to a booking without you ever feeling like you're selling, which I've covered in one of the previous videos. Okay, and I'm also going to show you what to do with the people who aren't ready to buy, the real time wasters. Okay, the issue is most tattoo artists just use the excuse if someone doesn't buy, oh, they're a time waster. No, you're just not very good at talking to a human being, unfortunately. Okay, but of course there are actual time wasters. So how to pick up on who they are and how to swiftly continue along while still leaving a positive note. Okay, and as I mentioned, time wasters who could become your best clients in 3 to 6 months if you handled it right. All right, let's get into it. So the whole goal of this process is this whole conversational process is not to get them to buy like ASAP. It's getting the information to know how to present our process and work in a way that actually relates to what they are really looking for and really value. Okay, we present ourselves through the view of the desired outcome and experience, not the details. Okay, for example, if a client says they want to be involved in the process because of a bad experience with an artist in the past, or due to a fear of not being heard and therefore not being connected to the finished piece, then we need to reiterate more than anything how we do consultations, right? The design process and how nothing will be put on their body until they have expressed content with every part of the design. Why are we going in more depth about this? Because they mentioned that's what they value. So once again, we have to, in our conversations, get the information of what they really, really desire, not what they say they desire, but what they really desire, so we can present ourselves through that lens. Okay, hence this example. Okay, you also need to know when to dig deeper and when to not talk your way of the sale as well. So a lot of these questions I'm going to show you are for people who you can feel are on the fence and need some trust building. The other skill I'll teach you is with the 3% buyers rule, as I mentioned, a lot of these guys are ready to go right here, right now. And sometimes you can talk your way out of the sale as well. So some people will be ready to go. We just want to make sure we get them in for a consultation or booking faster. So just picking up on cues where you can skip the lengthy conversation that I recommend you guys have and get straight to like a consultation, for example. The 3% buyers rule traits. So traits of people that are very, very, very serious that you want to just get them on the phone or get them on a consultation or get them in the shop ASAP. Extreme depth of answers. They mention how long they've been following you. And there's a sense of urgency in their plans. They give you dates, they give you timelines. These people, you want to just get them face to face as soon as possible. But for the rest of everyone else, you need to build a hell of a lot more trust and a hell of a lot more of an understanding about what they really desire, because a lot of them don't even know what they desire, as I've mentioned before. Okay, so first part of a conversation is the information discovery phase. So you're discovering information about them that is going to help you present yourself in a way that they want an artist to see, in the light that they want the artist to be in. And also it's going to help you understand the information to overcome their objections later down the line in the conversation, which we'll get into. Okay, so what I use is what's called the ACA framework, which you've heard in another video, but it's acknowledge what they said. Okay, so this proves you listened. For example, simple phrases like I understand, or a short repetition or paraphrase of what they said to show you understood. Okay, then you compliment or connect with them. So this builds warmth and separates you from the commodity of artists who just spit out a price, right? So, oh, I love this idea because this is a beautiful idea. I love that you're thinking it through properly. You've clearly put a lot of thought into your decisions. I completely get where you're coming from because I went through the same thing. So connecting, complimenting one or the other. What we're doing is we're making this conversation feel like a real conversation with a friend, not an interrogation, right? Not just question after question after question. What placement? What's the design? Where do you want it?
This is the price. What's your budget? Like, we want it to naturally flow, so they get caught in that flow and open up more. So it gives us that ammunition of information to know how to present ourselves, and also how to call out their contradictions further in the conversation, which we'll also get into. Okay, so the next thing then is we ask. So we ask a Socratic guiding question, right? This is where you guide them to clarify with Socratic questioning. You know what Socratic questioning is from the previous video, which is where we ask a question that's open-ended to lead them down a certain path to get a certain amount of information, okay? Based on Socrates. So, for example, where did this idea come from? What stopped you from getting this tattoo sooner? Why did you reach out to me in particular? Why not go back to the other artist for this piece, right? These are all like specific questions, which I'll use in a real dialogue, okay? But once again, we're not asking questions just to get information. We're asking questions to create a perspective shift in their mind, okay? What I mean by that is, when you're asking these sort of questions, you're also asking them to get them to answer the question, and the answer sometimes reveals to themselves any contradictions or irrationalities or reasons they are, they are not committing, even though it's the complete opposite of what they want, right? Which is called cognitive dissonance, which we'll get into. But basically, these questions are kind of pulling out of them the answers or the conclusions that we want them to reach in their minds to make a good decision with us. Okay, once again, we'll get into all of it later down the video too. Okay, so as I mentioned before in another video, we're trying to understand 4 things. Okay, I've kind of simplified it to 4 things to really get you started on your sales conversational journey, and I really feel that if you focus on these in particular, you're gonna make a huge difference in your business. And then the specifics and fancier things, we can cover it in another time if you want to work with me one-on-one, or if you want to buy the full course as mentioned before in this video. We can do that, but for now, this is all you need to understand. Okay, so the 4 things I'm trying to look for: the frameworks, the checklist. Why do they want this tattoo? Okay, what fear or hesitation is stopping them from committing? What are they looking for in an artist? And do they understand price versus value? Okay, do you need to have all 4 of these crossed off? Like, do you need to know the information or the answer to all of these before dropping a price? No, of course not. But having at least 3 is going to give you the highest chance of converting a booking, right? If it's a DM conversation, even just 2, okay, and then getting it to a consultation. As I mentioned here, also, if it is a bigger piece, you will need a Zoom consultation more or less, right? Most of you will. So getting 2 of these crossed off in the DMs to build enough excitement and trust for them to book a consultation with you is a good strategy. Then covering the other 2, let's say, for example, the fear and what do they understand price versus value when you talk about the pricing and budget, etc., on the consultation is good before taking the final payment. This is just a really good framework and milestone for you to try and hit, because 2 reasons, right? If you understand the answers to these and you have the answers to these, number 1, you know the client really, really well and you understand how to present yourself. But number 2, you will have built way more trust than any other artist, because by default, by you understanding the answers to these, you've asked enough questions and you've gotten to know enough about the client for them to feel like you really care, right? And you should really care. Okay, so you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone by trying to figure out what these are. You're simultaneously getting the information you need to present your process better and to help them overcome their fears or objections they have in the future. And you're building trust with them because you're actually giving them the time of day, which most artists won't even bother at all. Okay, so now let's go through a couple of example conversations. So this full DM conversation from Price Focused Opener is going to start with us capturing why they want to get a tattoo, right? So if we go back, this one, what was the fear? What are they looking for in an artist? Do they understand price versus value? And now I have 2 other examples, as you can see here, that go a different order. My point being is, I'm not here to give you scripts, because if I give you scripts, you're not going to learn anything. What I'm here to do is give you frameworks so you can intuitively know where to guide the conversation and let the conversation flow in the way it's going, and just check off the things one by one, but they don't have to be in order, right? The other thing as well is, you guys are so hard on yourself when it comes to this stuff. You guys are so naturally intuitive and creative. And a lot of this stuff I'm going to teach you in this video, you already are doing naturally. I'm just going to scientifically explain why it works. So my main point is, I know this sounds really woo-woo when I say this, But if you really deeply understand this and you're really actively listening to your client and you're present, the right thing to say is going to come to your mind, the right question to ask. If you understand this deeply, which we'll get into, and I really mean that. I know it sounds quite daunting and intimidating to think, oh yeah, I'm just supposed to know when I know. You really will, okay? You really will know how to guide the conversation, especially by getting experience doing this and also learning this document top to bottom as well. Okay, so let's go through the first conversation where we're going to cover all four, and then we're going to give them our price range, and we're going to try to book a consultation, for example, in the DMs. Okay, the other thing as well with these conversations is it could cut off halfway and you get them on a consultation. I'm just writing it all written so I can cover it through, but you don't have to have this whole conversation in the Instagram DMs. In fact, sometimes it might be overkill, but maybe doing the first half of these type of conversations in the DMs and then transitioning to the Zoom consultation or in-person consultation is the way to go. Once again, you know what's going to work for you. You'll have the feeling, and just trust yourself on that. Okay, so here we go. Number one, we're going to go why, fear, artist, price. Hey, I love your work. I have this idea for a Phoenix tattoo. How much would it cost roughly? Okay, so client. So then you say, hey, name, nice to meet you. I would love to give you a quote for this piece. I just need to ask you a couple of quick questions to give you the most accurate quote. All right, so this is ACA framework. Once again, hey, name, nice to meet you. I would love to give you a quote for this piece. So we're acknowledging what they asked, right? What they said. How much would it cost? Okay, so we're not avoiding the question. I just need to ask you a couple of quick questions to give you the most accurate quote, right? So this is acknowledge. This is your opener, right? You're taking control of the conversation, okay? So plus you're explaining why why you are about to ask questions, okay? So the client is receptive and open to answering, okay? I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions to give you what you asked for, okay? So now they're going to be receptive and they're going to answer openly. If you just say, hey, can I ask you a couple of quick questions? They're going to feel like you're dodging the question. Does that make sense? So now we're going to go into the ACA. So A, C. By the way, this is a beautiful Phoenix tattoo idea. Where did this idea come from? Compliment, ask a Socratic guiding question. All right. And the other thing as well, the reason I like to use this as an opener is when you say, by the way, this is a beautiful tattoo idea. Where did this come from? It almost seems like it's unscripted because you're saying, by the way, it's like you've kind of thought of this randomly. You're going off script. But what's happening is we're taking the conversation away from transactional focused thinking about cost to emotional focused thinking. Where did this idea come from? Okay. But when you say, by the way, and you say this first, it feels natural. It feels like a conversation with a friend or you get the point. Okay. So now let's go to the client's answer here. So it's a bit personal, but I've come out of a few really tough years. Feels like I'm starting over. The whole rising from the ashes representation a Phoenix has really speaks to me right now. So now we've gotten their why, as you can see here. Okay, so we've checked off one of them. And now we're going to do ACA again. I get that completely. That's a beautiful way to mark a new chapter. Compliment. I love doing pieces like this. Okay, what's the most important part of this tattoo for you? Is it capturing a specific feeling in the Phoenix, the overall aesthetic, or something else? Right? So ACA again. I get that completely. Acknowledge, compliment, ask a guiding question. All right, this is another discovery question. So definitely capturing the feel of rebirth, but this is just a quick reference I found. I also wanted to feel unique and authentic. So you can see here by asking another question about the design and the art itself, you get a little more information. I wanted to feel unique and authentic. This is ammunition we have in the future, right? If they want it to feel unique and authentic, what does that mean? There's going to be more effort and time put into the design, right? So you want to say in the future, if they say, hey, this is going to take too long, you say, well, listen, you mentioned that what's really important for you is for it to feel unique and authentic, right? So you're going to use their words for them in the future to help them overcome their irrational contradictions. Okay, so this is what I mean. We're gathering this information, the client feels heard, and we really understand how to present ourselves as well. Okay, so artist, okay, got it. It's great that you have a clear picture of what you want. How long have you had this idea for? Okay, so you can see here, okay, got it. It's great that you have a clear picture of what you want, right? You could say, oh, you've put a lot of thought into this idea. Once again, ACA, acknowledge, compliment, ask another guiding question. But you can see that the acknowledge and compliment makes it it connects to the Socratic guiding question. Like, it makes sense why you would ask this next, right? Oh, you've clearly got a clear picture of what you want. How long have you had this idea for? It makes sense for me to ask that. So the other thing as well is you don't want to ask a question that doesn't naturally go with the flow of the conversation. Hence why I say you don't need to get these checked off in order. Okay. So how long have you had this idea for? 1 year. Okay, I understand. So it's quite a while. It's nice to talk to someone who clearly puts a lot of thought into their decisions. So this is, once again, AC again. Okay, I understand. Acknowledge. So quite a while. It's nice to talk to someone who clearly puts a lot of thought into decisions. This is doing two things. It's complimenting them, but it's also labeling them. So what you'll also be taught by me in sales is what's called labeling, which is where you label the client with a characteristic trait or a character trait that you want them to act in accordance with in the future of the conversation. Okay, what am I doing here? I'm labeling them with the character trait that they think through their decisions. They're rational. They put a lot of thought. They make the right decision. Because what do we want them to do? We want them to take their time. We want them to not cut corners. We want them to understand why we're more expensive. We want them to understand why it's going to take so long, right? Because they want it to feel unique and authentic. And we're labeling hey, you put a lot of thought in your decisions. This is due to what's called the commitment and consistency principle in psychology, which is where when we act in one direction of something, we want to act in accordance of the direction we're going, right? For us to say one thing or do one thing and then do the opposite hurts our self-identity and ego, right? Because we are contradicting our own ego and our own values, etc. So what you're doing is you're reminding them, you're labeling them that they put a lot of thought into their decisions so that they will subconsciously act in accordance with that later down the line, which I'll show you, okay? So that's another little trick you can use as well. Okay, so is there any reason you didn't get this tattoo earlier, right? Or you could say, was there any reason in particular that stopped you from getting this tattoo sooner? Once again, whatever way sounds natural to you, this is what I really want you guys to understand as well. Do not just copy my script top to bottom. These are just examples. You want it to be written in your tonality, in your voice, right? There's a million ways to ask this question, right? So the whole goal is we're just trying to get the answer to this question. So ask this question that is natural to you, because that is how you will never feel fake or inauthentic or salesy, right? Because number one, you know you're doing this to better understand them and help them make a better decision. But number two, you're talking to them in your own words, okay? You're just using my frameworks, right, that I'm teaching you. So just really want you guys to understand that. You can obviously copy to get started, but really try to write all of these questions and guide it in your own wording, okay? Your own tonality, your own humor, all of this stuff, okay? So once again, okay, I understand. So it's quite a while. It's nice to talk to someone who clearly puts a lot of thoughts into their decisions. Is there any reason you didn't get this tattoo earlier? Was there any reason in particular that stopped you from getting this tattoo sooner, right? One of the two ways. Yeah, I know it's been a while. Haha, I've just been looking for the right artist. Okay, so now we're getting into what they value in an artist and their fear. Okay, for example, you're going to acknowledge and connect now. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I've had some tattoo artists fuck my shit up many times, lol, right? So that's something I would naturally say. You might not say that. My point is you're connecting in some way. Okay, yeah, you could say, yeah, I've had some tattoo artists really mess up my tattoos before. I really understand the feeling. You're saying the same thing. It's just a different tonality. Okay, so what are you looking for in an artist that you haven't found yet? Just so I can make sure I'm the right person for this. You see the way everything that you're asking is, strategically guided. We're asking all the right questions, but it makes sense why I'm asking this question. It flows naturally with the conversation. This is what I mean is when you're exposed to this and you've done this many times and you've watched this video over and over, it will honestly intuitively come to you. Okay, and you can obviously have questions ready, banked to use, and you'll just know when to use the right question here and there. Okay, but you can see here, I'm just guiding this conversation to where it's taking me. Okay, and I'm checking off bits one by one. All right, so what are you looking for in an artist that you haven't found yet? Just so I can make sure I'm the right artist for this. I want an artist who listens to my ideas and makes me feel involved in the process. I got a tattoo before and the experience was horrible. Okay, boom. So now we have the information here, right? So now we know why what they value in an artist, but also as well why they haven't committed to this before, right? They got their shit fucked up in the past. So now you know how to present yourself differently, right? Because the reason they're not going back to that previous artist is because they didn't feel involved in the process and they hated the tattoo because they didn't feel involved, and therefore they didn't resonate with the finished piece, and the experience was horrible. They didn't feel listened to, right? So am I going to talk about my line work? Am I going to talk about the aftercare? Am I going to talk? No, I'm going to talk about how involved this person's going to be in their own design, in the collaboration process, right? And if you are an artist who doesn't have them that involved, then you're going to present it in a way where you're just overcoming their fear, because it's not about them not feeling involved in the process that they're scared of. What they're really fearful of is getting a tattoo that they don't like, right? That's it. Okay. That's what they're fearful of. And the way that they're going to prevent that fear from happening is by being really involved in their process. So you could say, hey, I completely understand. Let's say you don't have them very involved in your process. You could say, I completely understand. Well, one thing I can promise you is we won't put anything on your skin until you're absolutely happy with all of it. Okay, right? What I'm basically saying there is you're not going to be involved in the process at all, but you're still going to be happy with the outcome. Okay. So once again, we're just trying to address and present ourselves in a way that we know that they need to see you in. Okay. So for example, yeah, that sucks. I've been there. Well, here's how it's different with me. So then you can explain what makes you different here, right? So now you're just presenting the difference that you have. And then you can say, by the way, on that note, right? So this is, once again, it fits the flow of the conversation. Why did you reach out to me in particular? Okay. So we're asking the next question. So now we know their why. We know what their biggest fear is. Now we want to know exactly what they're looking for in an artist, right? I loved your work and I saw some tattoos that were very similar in the style and aesthetic I've been wanting my Phoenix to be in. And I also saw a video that showed how involved your clients are in the design process, like you just explained, okay? Which is super important to me, right? So we already had an inclination on this. We just used this Socratic question to get them to expand on it, right? So this gives me loads of ammunition and depth in to present myself, okay? In the way that I know that they want me to present myself in, okay? Artists, got it. I appreciate the kind words. This will be on the forearm, right? Where would you like to place this, okay? So my point here is you can now get the small amount of information you need, right? As little as possible, honestly, to give them a rough quote. The whole goal of this initial conversation is not to do the consultation, right? It's not to size designs up and get placements and all of this stuff. It's to build a different type of relationship and a different type of trust and show that you care, okay? And to give you the information to present yourself in a way. And then all this stuff will figure itself out, right? What they need is just to trust you, okay? So anyway, the reason you're asking this here, or you can ask this here, is to give them that rough quote that they asked for at the start, okay? Because I know that you need some sort of information, right? If they've given you like all the details at the start of the conversation, like the size, design, placement, then you don't need to do this. Main thing is I'm just adding this in here for you guys that are thinking, wait, how do I know how to give them a quote? Okay. As I mentioned, the flow of the conversation, that could be at the start, could be at the end. The main thing is that we want to cover this other stuff. Okay. So if we go back here, got it. I appreciate the kind words. This will be on the forum, right? Where would you like to place this? What size are you thinking? Just getting minimum info needed to make a rough quote, right? So then the client answers these questions. And then this is where you transition to the pitch, right? To presenting your prices, etc. So, okay, based on everything you told me, this piece will take 2.5 to 3 sessions. I charge $1,500 a session. So that will be a rough investment of $4,000 to $4,500. This includes the design process and time together as well. Okay, what I would recommend is that we set up a free consultation together. We can size some things up, talk more about the design, and talk about any changes or additions we make to make it more unique and authentic to you, right? We're using their own words, and connect it more to your personal transformational story, okay? Matching your process and price with their desired outcome. So talk more about the design so they're involved. Talk about any changes or additions we make to make it more unique and authentic, which they mentioned, and connect it more to your personal transformational story, which they mentioned is the whole reason they want this tattoo in the first place. See? Matching your process and price with their desired outcome. See how much more valuable you seem when you present it this way, because you have this information. If someone just said, what's the price? And you said 4,500, they'd be like, fuck off, you know? Okay, so let's continue. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the price? Is that what you were expecting, right? So then you ask this question, okay? And then let's say if we're lucky, that's fair. I know good work isn't cheap. I'm happy to invest more as long as it turns out how I imagine it, right? So now we understand they get price versus value, where they say, yeah, I understand. I know why you're worth more, okay? And they might not have even known why you're worth more until this conversation, hence the reason you have this conversation, okay? Because every other artist, every other one of your competitors won't do this, and that will allow you to close more people, close a higher percentage, and over time charge way more because you are worth more, because you care more. Okay. So of course, not every conversation flows this perfectly, but I wanted to give a rough example of all 4 boxes being checked through a natural conversation that you guided. Okay. Because of course the client could say something like, honestly, it's more than I expected, right? Which is an objection. So we'll get to this soon. Okay. But that's just one quick example conversation of how you're naturally guiding this and you're getting the information to not only build trust, but to present yourself in a way that they want you to present yourself in a way that you're showing yourself in the light of what they value. And also you're, throughout the process, you're labeling them and complimenting them with traits that you need them to have in order to make a better decision further down the line. Okay. When it comes to money, patience, time, etc. So let's continue on to another conversation. A little side note here. Okay. If they asked, and even if they didn't, it's always good to give them a rough price range towards the end of the DM conversation. Okay. Otherwise they'll get agitated. 100% you do if they asked, and it shows transparency and it builds trust if you do and they didn't ask, because some artists will hide that information if they don't ask. Main thing is, if you build up this trust and you have a good conversation, people will rationalize your price more. Okay. So, always remember to drop a rough price range at the end of the conversation if you can. If you don't have enough information, obviously you can get them on a consultation, but if you can, do, because otherwise they'll get agitated. All right. As I mentioned, if you don't have enough information to give an accurate quote, explain how you need a consultation to give a clearer quote, but give them a super rough price range based on the information you have. Maybe they sent you other tattoos you had, or maybe they sent you 2 points of information. Okay. It could be super range, like it could be anything from 3,000 to 5,000, whatever, and explain how the consultation would allow you to give a way clearer price point. It just gives them an anchor and it shows transparency. And also it clears up any miscommunication, because you could then spend the next hour on a consultation and then at the end you could say, hey, it's going to be $5,000, and they say, oh, I thought it was going to be $95. So you also want to cherish your time somewhat when it comes to consultations, but the main thing is, it's good, it's transparent to give a rough price point when you can, and you'll also be able to weed out objections earlier as well. Oh, well, that's a lot. Okay. It's good that they say that, because if you had a consultation with them and you went through all of it and then you drop the price and they say, oh, that's way too much, then you're on the back foot. Okay. Whereas if they say it's too much in the DMs, you can help them understand why a little bit earlier, and then get the people who are open to understanding why more on a consultation. Okay. But the trust you have built and interest you've shown in them in the initial DM conversation is what is going to incentivize them the most on showing up for a consultation, as you have differentiated yourself from other artists and they can feel that you care, as I mentioned. Okay. Then through the extra trust and connection you build on the consultation, they have more reasons to rationalize your high price point rather than rationalizing reasons not to go with you. Okay. Remember, confirmation bias. We covered this earlier in the course. Whereas when people have a strong opinion on something, aka you being the right artist for them, they're going to go out of their way to find reasons and information that confirm their existing belief, which is, this is my artist. So they're going to go from, I can't afford this, to how can I afford to go with this artist because I have to go with them, right? Remember, confirmation bias. It's this is what this conversation is doing as well, is just reaffirming to them that you're the right decision, so that they battle internally with your price points rather than battle against you. Okay. And they make long-term better decisions. Maybe they wait 6 months and save up to go with you. Okay. So let's go through to conversation 2 here. I'm actually going to pause quickly and get some water. Okay. So continuing on, we have conversation example 2. So this is a client who wants a geometric sleeve. So I've tried to use multiple different styles and stuff and types of clients as well to give you guys a variety. And the order in which we get the 4-part checklist is different this time. So it's fear, artist, price versus value, and why. So as you can see here, the client says, hey, I'm looking to get a geometric pattern sleeve. I've been looking for a good artist for so long and finally came across your page recently. So this is an example of going through this earlier flow in a different order because of what they've said. I've been looking for a good artist for so long and finally came across your page recently, right? So they're kind of laying it up for you to ask, okay, well, what did other artists lack and why did you pick me? Hence the order here. So Let's have a look here. Hey man, so glad to hear you appreciate my work. Actually, really curious to know what stopped you from reaching out to some other artists you found. You mentioned you've been looking for a good artist. Then the client says, man, honestly, I've seen some bad geometric sleeves, like really bad. It all looks like a poorly placed sticker instead of actually being part of the arm. So there's more information. They wanted to flow with the arm. It honestly threw me off for a while until I found your page. So then the artist says, okay, I see. Yeah, geometric work is no walk in the park, especially if you want it done right. I love that you so here we're labeling again. I love that you haven't shortcutted anything and put a lot of thought into this decision to make sure it's the right one long term. If only all clients were like you, lol, right? That's my tonality, but you get the point. We're labeling them. If only all clients were like you, right? We're making them feel special. What part of my geometric work made you reach out to me in particular out of everyone? So you can see here, we are going down the why and then the artist route, right? So we've realized what their biggest fear is, which is that it won't look and feel like part of the arm, right? And they don't want to shortcut decisions like that. And then we're asking them now, well, what are you looking for in an artist in particular, by asking them, why did you reach out to me out of all of the artists? As you can see, fear and artists. So if we continue, they say your patterns are really intricate, but they still flow with the arm perfectly, and you use lighting and shadow in a way that really creates that sense of depth I'm looking for. It's not just a bunch of shapes slapped on, it looks like it was destined for the body it's on, which is what I'm looking for. Okay. And then you say, for example, I'm so glad you noticed that. That's the whole philosophy behind my work. The flow is just as important as the pattern, right? So acknowledging, connecting. So you're looking for an artist who prioritizes custom fitting the geometry to your anatomy while keeping the intricacy and depth. Got it. Okay. So we're also labeling what they said that they like. So we can use that later down the line if they want to shortcut decisions. Hey, can we do it faster? Hey, someone else can do it cheaper, etc. Well, you mentioned this is what you value. Okay. So for example, then you ask what size placement reference is. Then they send a couple of stuff. Once again, we're just getting enough detail to give them a rough guide for a price. You don't even need to get this if you can give them a rough guide already. So they send the requested stuff, and then let's say you say, to get that realistic part of the body look you mentioned with depth and texture, it takes a lot of extra layering and detail work. That's why you see so many bad ones, as they are done in 1 to 2 sessions, which is impossible for a tattoo that size to have the depth and natural flow we need in that time frame. Okay, so now you're labeling why the other artists' tattoos didn't flow as well as they wanted to, but you're also explaining that the reason is that you need more time, and aka more sessions. So then you transition to your pitch, which is matching your price and your process to their desired outcome, right? For a full sleeve done properly, right? Done properly, which is what they mentioned. When you are ready to move forward, you're looking at a range of 7,000 to 10,000. It's a higher investment because the technique to make it have real depth and flow naturally with your body shape is so intensive. Remember, that's exactly what they mentioned was scaring them away last time, right? Matching your price, that should say, and process with their desired outcome. Okay. Then the client says, yeah, that makes sense, that it would be that much more expensive if done properly. Then the artist says, amazing, I'm glad we're aligned with that. By the way, what attracted you to getting a geometric piece in particular? So now you can, I'm just giving you a very broad example of checking off all 4 again, but you can see here that we have gotten their fear, which is that the artists are going to speed through it and it's not going to flow properly with the arm. We know what they're looking for in an artist and why they chose us. They already mentioned that they understand why it would be more valuable, and now we're asking them why they even want a geometric sleeve in the first place. Hence the different order, okay? Because it's the order isn't as important, it's the quality and depth of the conversation. Okay, so amazing. I'm glad we're aligned by that. By the way, what attracted you to getting a geometric piece in particular? Client, I'm an architect, so I spend all day thinking about form, space, and structure. A geometric sleeve feels like an extension of what I do. It's art that follows the same principles I live by, which I therefore feel would visually represent me. This is actually taken from one of my students who has heard this in a couple of different shapes and forms from their clients, students being tattoo artists. And yeah, of course, not every client is going to go in this depth, but the whole point of getting really good at sales is not to turn people into great clients. It's to not let any of these great clients, when they arise, fall through the cracks by your lack of attention and skills, if that makes sense. If someone's like, yo, how much for this? And you say, okay, well, tell me a bit about your ideas. I don't know what I want. You're not Rain Man. You can't change that. But that person who reached out saying, yo, how much for this? I don't know what I want. through your marketing and your content could, over 6 months to a year, even 3 months, be more informed about what type of client they should be, what type of client they want to be, what they want, and what they value in an artist. So then when they reach out again, they are a great client. They're like this. They have this depth because they've thought about it more. My point being is, even those people who reach out and you think, oh, here we go, give them the time of day just for 1 or 2 seconds. Just leave it on a very positive note, because I promise you, those seeds get planted, and you'll be very surprised at how many people come back, especially if your content has viral connection and conversion content, which is informing them and warming them up to becoming a paying client, right? They are lacking in information if they're acting in that accord. And then, of course, some people are just naturally rude, but that is not the majority, okay? Anyway, continuing on. So the client gives us a beautiful explanation of how he's an architect and etc. Then you say, that's really cool. I love the thought behind the design choice. I think we can make something incredible together once I get to know more about you and what geometric designs we feel in particular represent you well, right? So just, once again, paraphrasing what they said to us to show that we understand. What I would recommend is that we set up a free consultation together. We can size some things up, talk more about the geometric design, and talk about any particular designs and flows we use to make it as much of a visual representation of you as possible, while also making sure we keep the depth and the design naturally fits your body, as if it was always meant to be there, right? Once again, we are matching your process to their desired outcome of everything they mentioned, right? Visual representation of you as possible, keeping the depth, design actually fits your body, okay? We are paraphrasing what they want to show that we understand and to show that we are exactly what they want in an artist, okay? Then if you're happy with everything and are ready to move forward, we can talk about the initial investment and getting started. No pressure either way. I just want to make sure you feel I'm the right person for you, okay? So keeping it really soft, all we're trying to do here is generate a consultation, and then we will continue on with the price point stuff if they start to give objections for money, etc. Okay, continuing on. Little side note here. If the conversation is going stale, what made you reach out to me as an artist in particular? Gets the conversation back on track and revives conversations as they remind themselves out loud what they value in you. What's focal is causal, if you remember from the psychology module. So once again, I really love saying or teaching tattoo artists to say this, and I've said this in my past when I used to do it for them. And what made you reach out to me as an artist in particular? Just if you feel like you're losing direction and you are panicking, you don't know where to go, this is a good way to steer back on track, because they remind themselves out loud of the value you bring. Okay, so let's go to conversation 3 here. So this is a surrealism writer. So this is a person, sorry, this is a writer who wants a surrealism piece. Okay, so this order goes artist, why, fear, value. Okay, so hey, I'm looking to get an abstract surrealistic tattoo. I'm thinking Dali, death, and technology for inspiration and references. So then you can say, hey, John, that's amazing. Sounds really interesting and unique. What was it about my specific style of surrealism that made you reach out to me in particular? Okay, so just building up that trust, getting them to say out loud what they value in you. Obviously, surrealism being a very specific abstract kind of style, you want to know why they are attracted to your type of style, right? If I'm a surrealism artist, okay, it's natural. You could, of course, ask them, okay, why do you like Dali, death, and technology? Completely natural too. I'm just showing you 3 different examples of them going completely different ways, because if it was why then artist, it would be the same as one of the other ones. So hey, John, that's amazing. Sounds really interesting and unique. What was it about my specific style of surrealism that made you reach out to me in particular? Then the client could say, for example, I love that your pieces often read like dream fragments made tangible, almost like objects that shouldn't coexist. And of course, the quality of your work. I haven't found another artist that sees the world in the way that I do. And I really think your art is the closest to what I envision. Like these ones here. So they send, for example, some references of your own work. I want something a similar size to these 2. Okay, so they send you images of your own work. So then you say, that's so nice to hear. I'm glad that you feel I can represent your idea well. So acknowledging, complimenting. On that note, do you mind me asking where the idea of combining Dali, death, and technology comes from in particular? So as you can see, we understand why they value you over other artists, what they really value, that they feel that you see the world the same way that they do. And they think your art is the closest to what they envision. Okay, so we're going to use that later in the conversation. All right. So we asked them why Dali, death, and technology. So client, I've always been drawn to Dali because his work feels like logic dissolving, time melting, reality bending. And I feel that mirrors how my perception has shifted over the years. Death represents a period of loss and transformation I went through, not just literal death, but the death of old versions of myself. Technology ties into how I processed and survived that era. Screens, systems, and artificial structures became both a coping mechanism and a source of alienation. Okay, once again, I know that not all clients are going to be this amazing when describing their ideas. I'm just showing you for examples and reference purposes, because over time you'll be able to build the trust to pull these answers out of people, especially on in-person consultations or on Zoom consultations. Okay, but just stick with me here because I promise this will all connect together now. I see. It's great that you think properly about long-term decisions. Once again, labeling. And was the only reason you didn't commit before because you couldn't find an artist who gets it, or was there something else that stopped you from getting this piece until now? So we need to know if that was the only reason that they haven't gotten a tattoo, because if it isn't, that is what your objection will be later down the line in your sales conversation. Once again, objections being things that they say to you or reasons that they give that they cannot buy. Okay, so you might tick every box as an artist, but if they're still scared of their father's judgment or their wife's judgment or something, then you can tick every box, but they still won't buy, right? So you still want to figure out, okay, was there something else that stops you? All right. As I mentioned again, this doesn't all have to be in the DMs. In fact, I advise you not to do this all in the DMs because it might go on for too long. The other reason I advise you only to do maybe half of this in the DMs is because when you're on a consultation with someone on Zoom or in person, they cannot stall. They cannot think about their answer. They cannot make some shit up and reply to you the next day. You catch them in the act, so you can pick up on tonalities, hesitations, contradictions, right? Which makes it much easier for you to intuitively know what the client really means compared to what they're saying. Okay. Just want to let you know, I just want to reiterate, this is just a very detailed, I wrote 3 detailed examples just to give you the most context on all the different ways it can go. All right. So the client then says, no, it was just that I never really saw art or spoke to an artist that gets it, as you said. Actually, I'm also worried that I won't be able to explain my abstract idea properly and the artist will just do their own thing. So there you go. Actually, this as well, right? So they could really love your art. You could tick every box in terms of the quality of the art, but then they might not book because they are under the assumption that they won't be able to explain their idea properly, which has nothing to do with you, as you can see, right? And then the artist will just do their own thing. So you can see that by probing a little bit more, you get even more information that will allow you to present your process even better, okay? Because if you didn't get this information, they might say, oh, let me think about it. I'll go talk to my wife, and you never know why. It's because of this that you didn't understand, all right? I do understand the value of the artist taking my ideas and interpreting it through their art, but I also hope it can be a collaboration, not just me giving up complete control. So there, we've hit the nail on the head there, right? They've said the words. So you can see after probing once or twice, you get a way more in-depth answer that's really the answer, right? It's not just about, oh, I'm looking for the right artist. It's all this depth, okay? And sometimes clients don't even know the answer to this. The Socratic questions you're asking them, what's going to pull out the real deep desires and answers to these that they might not even be consciously aware of. But by you doing this, you allow yourself to understand exactly what you need to do and say next and how to present yourself. And they also understand why they've been fearful in the past. What do they really value, so that they're in a better state of mind when buying. And they allocate that trust and that realization and that relief to you. Okay. So the artist, that's completely understandable. And honestly, I really appreciate you being open about that. Collaboration is a huge part of how I work, right? So acknowledging, complimenting, connecting. I never see it as you handing over control, but rather us building something together. Okay. My role is to translate what you're feeling and experiencing into a visual language that still feels true to you. What I'd suggest is that we set up a free consultation together. That gives us the space to slow things down, talk through your experiences and references in more depth, and explore how surreal elements, abstraction, and flow can come together in a way that feels intentional and personal. Okay. Remember, once again, we are explaining our process in their desired state, to their desired state, right? We can look at placement and sizing in more depth and brainstorm a design that is in my style and that has my unique artistic interpretation, but you are also super happy with, right? Because when they say giving us up complete control, once again, what it really just means is I'm scared I'm going to get a tattoo I don't like. So I need control. That's all it is. And that's just a lack of general trust in general. Okay. So once again, we are presenting the next step, which is the consultation, in a way that benefits their desired outcome and relates to exactly what they want. Okay, no pressure at all. I like saying this as well, just to make sure they know there's zero commitment. It means more people will show up to the consultations without having a real fear about having to pay something there and then. They know that they can just have a conversation and there's no pressure on them taking the next step. And because there's no pressure, they're more open, more receptive, and then they usually do take the next step if all the boxes are checked. Okay, so no pressure at all. I just want to make sure you feel heard, understood, and confident that I'm the right artist to make this with you. Okay, then the client says, that sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for your deep attention and interest. I've really enjoyed this conversation and I feel like I found my artist. Right, by the way, I know it's hard to say, but do you have a rough idea of what this will cost? Right, classic. You'll always get this at the end, sometimes as well, if they haven't asked before. As I said, it's always good and it's always positive and transparent to give them a rough range at the end, because it's also going to guard your time on consultations to the people who've already been exposed to the rough idea of cost and are still open to it. Okay. Of course, no problem. Based on the tattoos of mine that you sent me and how you mentioned you wanted something roughly the same size, those 2 tattoos took 2 full days, including the in-depth designing process together that we have before we start tattooing. I charge $1,500 per day, so those tattoos were $3,000 total. I can't guarantee it would be the exact same price, but it will probably be in around that range. Does that work for you? Okay, so remember they said, I want something like this. If we go back up here, I am looking to get inspiration references, and then they sent images of your work. Okay, so that's what you're referencing down here to give the quote. If they didn't send that, of course, you can ask them size, design, placement. All right, so now we've done everything, right? It's great. We've nailed it. We've got all 4 things. Why do they want the tattoo? What are they looking for an artist in particular? What's their biggest fear? Do they understand price versus value? Okay, and then a lot of people will turn around and say, honestly, that's more than I expected. Let me think about it, right? Well, fuck, what do we do now? Okay, and this is what's called objection theory. Okay, this is called getting an objection, right? Oh, let me think about it. It's honestly more than I expected. It's too expensive. I don't have the money right now. I'll get into all of this, but all of these sayings or these replies that they give or rebuttals are what's called objections. Okay, so let me explain to you how to, what we call in sales, overcome objections. Only if, once again, the best decision for this client is to get a tattoo from you, right? If that's not the case, then we want to help guide them to go somewhere else. Okay, but if we know that the only reason they're not about to buy is through some irrational contradiction they're having in their mind, right, due to a fear that's coming up, okay? Because think about it. When someone is about to make a lifelong decision, okay, and you check every box and they have verbalized that you check every box, and they also have a budget for that as well, for example, the only reason they would not go through with it is due to a fear, okay? And what let me think about it or let me go sleep on it, etc., means is just people building up distance between you and them due to their fight or flight defensive mode from being fearful, right? Like let me think about it. I'm just going to go away now. I'm going to push you away so I can just have breathing room, because right now I feel scared. I feel scared because I'm one step away from making a life-changing decision that is irreversible. And my primitive brain is telling me, whoa, this is uncharted territory. You might die, basically. Okay. And you're saying, wait, you might die. Yeah, because your primitive brain, the fight or flight, or the fear centers, right, the amygdala, only goes off when you are about to do something you are not used to or not comfortable with, right? And what the primitive brain is made for is for you to survive. Okay, so when that goes off, what you physiologically feel is the sense of like you're in extreme danger. Okay, I'll give you an example. I presented at the Eden Body Art Studios summer symposium to 200 tattoo artists last summer, and I'll tell you what, I was shitting my pants. But afterwards, I was completely calm. Why? Because I went up there, I gave my presentation, my amygdala or my fear center of my brain realized, oh, he's fine, he didn't die. This is now known territory, right? So the next time I do a speech, yeah, I might be a little nervous, but I actually would be excited to do it now, okay? And it's the same with your clients in this situation. They're just one step away from making an uncomfortable, irreversible decision, so they're getting scared, okay? And when they say I need to think about it, it's just giving them time and distance to trying to rationalize that fear, okay? So overcoming objections is all about reframing. Okay. So once again, as I mentioned, if you check every box, if they also check every box as a client, if they've mentioned that you're the artist for them, they have the money, they have the idea, then the reason that they're not buying is that the client has an irrational or misinformed perspective on something. Okay. And it's your job to change that perspective, not to get the sale. Because even if they don't go with you after you frame their perspective, reframing their perspective, reframing them will help them long term make a better decision. Most of them. Okay. Some clients will still make a terrible decision. Okay. But for example, let's say you have a client who has said that they value the depth and the time that goes into it and the flow of the body, and they understand it's expensive, and then they say, "Let me think about it," and you're thinking, "Why?" Because deep down in their mind, they're thinking, "Oh, that's actually way more than I thought, and this other guy's cheaper," right? They're thinking that, yet all of everything that they've said up until that point contradicts that exact decision that they're about to make, which is, I never went to an artist before because they never did the tattoo properly and it scared me. But now that I see you're so much more expensive, I'm thinking about going to them because they're cheaper, but I don't want to go to them because I know that I'm going to get a tattoo that looks like a sticker that's not going to flow on my body, right? And this is that tension that you feel when it comes to this point where they're like, "Oh, I don't know," etc. It's not tension between you and them, it's tension between their own mind, right? There's internal conflict happening. It's called cognitive dissonance. It's when we're acting we're acting in an opposite way to what we know we should be doing, right? So for example, that client, he said he values all this. He said he knows this is important, yet he's about to do the complete opposite, right? So what we're trying to do when overcoming objections is using their words and using the trust we've built and using our understanding to help reframe their perspective around the decision they're about to make so that they don't make a stupid fucking decision, right? And that's why I say most of them, because you can reframe someone's perspective. They think, "Thank you so much," and then they still go and fucking get a tattoo for $50 and come back and get a cover up, right? You can't save them all, but you can save most of them. And the whole point of this is, if you do this, not only will you help them make a better decision, but they will also 9 times out of 10 realize that the better decision is to go with you. Okay. So that's why it's also so important to gather some of this initial information in the discovery phase, because you can arm yourself with their own words when you need to make a point. Okay. Hence the example I gave of like the geometric sleeve guy who says he wants all this. He says this is important to him, but he's about to make the opposite decision. Okay. I'm going to show you examples here. Right. And what we're doing here, when we're calling them out on their bullshit in a nice way, asking them questions and leaving them with a perspective shift, is we're just planting the seeds, right? We're planting a seed of relationships. We're showing them that we are okay with or without their business, but we actually just want to help them make a better decision. And people appreciate the harsh call-outs because they are already thinking about the contradiction and the irrational beliefs they're having in their mind, right? But we're also planting the seed of ways of thinking, okay? If someone says, "Oh," or someone's thinking and says, I know an artist who can do it cheaper," and you've just spent the last 5 minutes talking about how he didn't go to someone who was cheaper because they didn't do it as well, this is where we have to kind of call them out on their bullshit, but we use their own words so they can't be mad at us, right? They can only be mad at themselves, right? Which they are. That's that tension you feel, that awkward conversation of like, "Oh, I don't want to push them." You're not pushing them. They are feeling that tension internally, which I'll get into. Okay. So for example, let's say someone is having this irrational belief of, "Oh, I want to get it now. So I can't afford you, but I want to get it now. So I guess I have to go to another artist," right? You want to reframe them to think long-term, right? Don't fucking do that. Save, come back in 6 months to a year to your favorite artist. Who cares if it's me or not? But just make a smart decision, right? They need to hear that. Okay. Because they have already explained to you that they value this. Most clients do value this, right? I would argue that most good clients have self-respect for their own body. And if they had a gun to their head, they would choose not giving into short-term gratification to make a better long-term decision. Okay. So my point is, when someone's thinking this, but they and they know that it's better to wait, you have to just say the obvious out loud, right? Call them out. And then they come back to you, right? Because they think, okay, I should save, I should wait long term. This is my best, this is the artist for me. My tattoo is going to be so much better if I just wait. So they save, they come back in 6 months, a year. Who cares? Because they come back, right? This is another thing. I think artists have this misconception about when you should expect someone to book. Who cares if it takes them like if you plant a seed now and they come back in 2 years? Who cares? Your career is going to be 10, 20 years anyway, right? So if you think about that in the long run, that's not a lot of time. If your whole career is 10 years and you're planting all these seeds now and they come back year by year by year, you think by year 10 you're not going to be overflown with clients, right? Of course, I know that no one wants to wait till year 10. My whole point is I'm being very conservative here, but they usually come back in 6 months to a year. And then if your marketing is great, right, you're answering all the right questions, you're showing happy clients, you're showing you're showing yourself more and your in-depth process of tattooing and all this stuff, right, which we've already covered in the viral connection and conversion content. You shorten the time frame it takes for them to make the better decision, right? And by having a conversation now and planting the seed, you reframe them to think about what the right decision is, okay? And then your marketing helps them come back earlier, right? Because a lot of the time people say, oh, I need to save, but they're just scared, right? They actually have the money. So then they go off and then they watch your content for 2 months and then they come back, right? Oh, and then, you don't say, oh, how did you save the money so fast? You just shut up and say, right, I'm pretty sure you already have the money, but that's fine. Let's go. Okay. Whole point is we're planting seeds. All right. Building positive relationships, like planting seeds for relationships, but also planting seeds in how we want our clients to think. Okay. As I mentioned before, content also shortens that timeline by mere exposure, right? As we've talked about before, and branding, plus overcoming objections through content, as we mentioned, right? As well. But this is conversion content. So answering the most common questions, talking about the most common hesitations that people have, inadvertently, subconsciously, visually, etc., showing a tattoo client who has the exact same problems as this person here, so that this person watching a reel is like, oh, okay, I'm ready to book because I'm not scared anymore, etc., etc. All right, so that is objection theory. All we're trying to do is the client is not thinking right? They say all this, but they're about to do the opposite. We just have to use their own words that we've accumulated to call them out on their bullshit and help them make a better decision. And that better decision doesn't have to be you, okay? Your duty is to help them make the best decision for them. Your duty is not to get their money, all right? That's how you will never feel like you are selling, as I've mentioned before, okay? So 3 main objections you will get. You will get 100 different ways that people will say all of this, but these are the 3 main objections that they all stem from. So money, it's too expensive, it's more than I expected, I can't afford it, etc. Trust, they have a lack of trust with an artist, or just a lack of trust in general. This is another reason. They could have been fucked over, excuse my French, by a family member or a friend in the past, so they naturally have a fear of trust, right, or a lack of trust. So it's nothing to do with you, or they've been badly hurt or badly treated by a previous artist, right? Hence trust in artists, okay? Then number 3 is fear. So they have a fear, for example, of commitment due to external judgment. So they're scared that their friends, family, coworkers are going to judge them, or internal regret. They're scared they're going to regret it in a couple of years if their personality changes, etc. Or they're scared of the physical pain, etc. Right? So money, trust, and fear. These are the main reasons or main objections you will get, okay? And you'll see that I haven't said, let me think about it, because let me think about it is not actually an objection, right? It is what we call a front or a smokescreen for a real objection, which is usually one of the 3 above. If someone says, let me think about it, as I mentioned before, they're just trying to buy time to get distance away from making the decision because it's scary. But the reason they want to buy time and distance is due to one of these 3, okay? So when someone says, let me think about it, that is just them kindly saying, I'm too scared to do this right now, or I don't want to make a decision right now due to one of these 3 things, okay? So the main thing is, if someone says, let me think about it, you have to ask 1 or 2 questions to get into the real objection, which I'm going to show you in a second here, okay? Another thing to note as well is a lot of the time too, anything timing or commitment, right? Oh, it's not the right time, or yeah, I just need to figure out my schedule with work, etc., is also a front for a real fear like money or trust, okay? Because think about it, if they were rich and trusted you with all their heart, do you think they would need to wait a while, right? No. Of course, some people are busy, right? If people want to travel to you, if people do need time off work, etc. But that is the minority, right? Not the majority. The majority are just saying that to create distance, right? So let me think about it. Let me just see when the right time is. Just simple ways for them to build distance because they are scared of making the decision there and then, which is okay. All right. It's completely human. I'm just pointing out why they are doing that. Okay. So to create distance for themselves to avoid a hard decision, as I mentioned, right? It's a scary decision. It's hard. They don't want to make it right then and there. Right. That still doesn't mean we should pressure them, but leaving them with a different perspective, as I mentioned before, that they need to hear will help them make a better decision in the long term. And I really want you guys to remember this quote as well. Most objections are not logical. They're emotional uncertainty trying to sound rational. Okay. For example, it's not the right time, or let me wait a while, or let me just check my schedule. That is a logical way to say, I'm scared, right? I'm scared, or it's too much money, or I'm scared of committing. I'm not sure if my friends or family are going to judge me. Do you see what I mean? So most objections are not logical. In fact, no objections are logical. That would be logistics, right? If you get say, oh, I only have this amount of money, can we split it this and this? That's not really an objection, right? That's just a logistics issue. Okay. So objections are emotional uncertainty trying to sound rational. All right. So there are countless objections. Okay. There's a million and one ways that someone could say, I can't do this right now. All right. These are just the three main reasons for most objections. We will get into unique objections and how to handle them later in this video. Yes, this video is still fucking going. And if you understand what's really behind the objection, you can guide the client to a decision that feels good for both of you. Okay. So continuing on now, let's talk about objection number one and how to guide this conversation, which is probably the most common one you will ever get. Hence, because of the limited time I have on this video, because this course is already fucking God knows how long, I'm only going to cover in-depth money. And then if you also have questions on trust and fear, you can always DM me on Instagram at Aurelius Grow, or of course you can join the mentorship group, where you will have access to me every single day as a mentor, and we'll have weekly calls together. Shameless plug, but continuing. Okay, so objection one is money. So this is the most common objection. But what does too expensive actually mean? Okay, because it could mean several things. I didn't expect it to cost that much, right? Which is an education issue. I don't have it right now. That's a cash flow issue, right? They literally don't have the money. I don't think it's worth that amount of money, which is a value perception issue. Okay, if someone has 20,000 bucks and says, "Oh, that's more expensive than I thought," it's not a cash flow issue, right? It's one of these two. In fact, it's probably both. I don't think you're worth that much, and I didn't expect it to be that much. Okay, so the whole point of this is you need to figure out what the reason is when they have a money objection. Okay, when they say it's too expensive, or I can't afford it, or I'm not sure, or it's more than I thought, etc. Your first move is not to defend your price. Okay, it's not to get defensive. It's to clarify what expensive actually means to them. Okay, so for example, let's say, oh, that's quite expensive. Let's say you say, okay, just so I understand, when you say expensive, do you mean it's more than you expected, or that you just can't afford it right now? Okay, so we're clarifying. Okay, and you can do this multiple other ways. All we're doing is we're clarifying. Once again, use your own words. It's more than I expected. Let's say they say it's more than I expected, or I can't afford it, right? So let's say they say it's more than I expected, somewhere along those lines. Once again, as I mentioned, they could say this 30 different ways. It's still the same framework. Okay, we're getting clarity on what monetary issue they really have. Okay, is it value? Is it the actual funds, or is it a lack of education? Okay, or a misconception about how it should cost. Okay, so root one, we want to get to the root of the anchor number. Okay, so if someone says it's more than I expected, for example, there's a number that they did expect, right? If they say it's more than I expected, there's a reason that there's a number that they did expect. So we want to figure out what is the number they had in their mind, so we can see where that number came from, and then we can help them understand why we are not close to that number. Okay. Also using their own words. So for example, we're going to getting to the root of the anchor number, right? So there's a number in their mind that is anchoring them to have this bias, right? Or to have this perception about you being too expensive. As I've mentioned before, I don't know if I mentioned it in the psychology course, but there's something what's called the anchoring bias, which basically explains that the first piece of information we receive on a topic dictates how we perceive every other piece of information on the same topic, right? For example, if I reach out to an artist and they say that their tattoos cost $200, then I reach out to you and you say you cost 1,000, I have now been anchored onto your price by the 200 to think that you're expensive. Okay. If I reach out to an artist and they say they're $5,000 and then I reach out to you and you say you're 1,000, I now perceive you as cheap or less expensive because I'm being anchored from the first piece of information I got, which is the 5,000, right? So getting to the root of the anchor number means we need to figure out why they think you're too expensive or why it's more than they expected. What did they expect and why? Okay. So, okay, not a problem. I completely understand. Do you mind me asking what number you had in mind? So let's say they say 1,000. I see. Do you mind me asking how you came to this number? Just so I can make sure I haven't set the wrong expectation somewhere. So we're also shifting the blame onto us so that they don't feel as much pressure. Now, the other thing as well, though, is you might be thinking, God, this is really fucking direct. Yes, it is. But if you've had the quality of conversation that you've had, right, you have built up enough trust and you've earned the right to be this direct. Okay. If you're this direct straight away, it feels a little bit awkward and it feels kind of out of place, you know? So this is especially amazing on in-person or Zoom consultations, right? Because they trust you and it feels completely natural, right? They don't know what you're doing. Okay. They don't know you're trying to get to the root of the anchor number, etc. Right. And the other point is you're not manipulating them either because you're trying to help them make a better decision. For example, I see. Do you mind me asking how you came to this number just so I can make sure I haven't set the wrong expectations somewhere? So then the client says, no, it wasn't you. Okay. So you're just kind of shifting the blame onto yourself just to relieve the pressure so they don't feel as attacked. Okay. No, it wasn't you. I was just told these prices by other artists, right? Or it's just what my other tattoos cost before, or it's just what I had in mind. I'm not too knowledgeable on tattoos, right? So now we know where this has come from. Okay. So for example, I was just told these prices by other artists, right? Well, if we've had a conversation, they said that they haven't gone to their artists from previous artists because they fucked their shit up or this and that and this and that, then you already have the ammo to say, well, hey, you mentioned that you're reaching out to me because your previous artist did this, and that is why they are this price, and that is why I'm that price, right? You're explaining their rationalities and their contradictions through their own words, okay? So that's what we're doing here is we're getting clarity, and then we're going to use their words from the previous conversation to reframe their perspective around making a better decision, okay? So for example, okay, I understand. It makes complete sense why you would have that number in mind, okay? Acknowledge, connect, right? Just make them feel heard. Can I share a perspective with you on investing in tattoos? All right. So now we're asking them permission to call them out on their bullshit, basically, okay? To help them realize that they're not thinking straight. Even though deep down, this is the other thing, deep down, you know, when they get agitated and you see them being shifty and they seem a little bit, fearful, it's because they feel the tension. Because every single, in a rational mind, you've checked every box of theirs and of yours. It makes complete sense. They understand why they are about to understand why you're this expensive. So the reason that they feel this kind of uncomfortability is because it makes no rational sense for them not to go with you. Hence, the reason they feel so weird because they're about to do the non-rational thing, if that makes sense, right? It's like there's no reason for them not to book with you. Therefore, they have these huge internal battles, hence the tension and physical kind of uncomfortability you'll start to feel. Okay. I hope that makes sense. I know I'm going around in circles here, but this is just super important to understand. And yeah, if it takes you fucking 10 days to watch this video, I completely understand. But watch this over and over again because it will completely shift the way that you do business, as I mentioned before. Okay, so continuing on. Can I share a perspective with you on investing in tattoos? Sure. This is where the information you gathered from the 4-part checklist right before in the previous conversation comes in handy. When I say previous conversation, it could be like just the last 10 minutes you had, right, with them. So closing perspective shift statement template. Okay, so this is just a very rough template, not specified to anyone. And then I have 3 conversational examples from the 3 above of overcoming their objections, right? But more or less, right, this is what you want to say. You mentioned before that you reach out to other artists, then you came to me, right? Let's say they mentioned something like that, or they gave you that rough prices, but you didn't book. You also mentioned you like XYZ about me, which you felt the other artist didn't have. Also mentioned you value depth, details, body flow, and it being done properly over everything. And I think the reason you didn't go with the other artists is because you felt they lacked that. To be completely transparent, the reason I charge a noticeable amount more than these artists is because my process, service, and finish work is better and more professional. So basically saying, hey, you're saying you're saying I'm too expensive, or you're saying this problem, but you mentioned you value this. And the decision you're about to make is the opposite of this. So if I'm being honest with you, this is why I'm like this, and you know this, you know why I'm like this, la la la. Okay, you get the point. This is a very rough template, and then you want to shift it to just leaving them on the perspective shift. So I completely understand if that doesn't change the fact that it's not an affordable investment for you right now. Just promise yourself one thing, right? Once again, we're labeling them with someone who sticks to their promises. Okay, just promise yourself one thing, that you will invest in the tattoo artist that you really want to go to and save up and wait if needed, whether that is me or not, right? So now we take away the pressure of these harsh words. Whether that is me or not, it doesn't matter. Please just don't cut corners and save a couple of dollars to get something permanent on your body that long-term you regret, just to satisfy the short-term gratification. Does not have to be like this word for word. In fact, this is way too long. I'm just giving you a very rough template of like more or less how you say what you're saying and why. Okay. So another example, my honest advice is don't rush a lifelong tattoo just because of immediate timing. If you really want it done right, it's worth saving for the artist you actually want, even if that takes a bit longer. So you're basically saying, hey, you mentioned that you value this, yet you're about to do this. This is why I match what you value. This is therefore, this is why I'm different. Okay. I completely understand if you still can't afford it. Just don't make a stupid decision. Basic framework. Okay. So let's go through the 3 example conversations on how we can overcome an objection from them. So if you remember the first one here, we had a guy who wants a phoenix tattoo. Okay. And they mentioned stuff about it being personal, feel unique and authentic, right? You can see how it makes sense. I've just been looking for the right artist. I want an artist makes me feel involved. I got the tattoo before and the experience was horrible. Okay. So if we go back down, let's say that specific person gives you a money objection. Okay. Then you say, okay, well, from what you, so let's say, for example, this is the Phoenix guy who's been saying all this. Okay. Can I share a perspective on you, Phoenix guy, with you, Phoenix guy? Okay. And then you say, from what you shared earlier, this is about marking a really important turning point in your life, right? Hence the Phoenix rising from the ashes. You also mentioned that in the past, you didn't feel listened to by an artist, and that experience really stuck with you. The reason my pricing is higher is because I slowed the process down and make sure you feel involved and understood the whole way through, which in turn results in a better finished tattoo, which by our conversation, which through your own words is more important to you than the price itself. So what we're kindly saying here is you just said you got your shit fucked up and you're about to go and get your shit fucked up again. I'm just joking around, but you get the point. Okay. If it's not affordable for you right now, that's completely okay. I just want you to promise yourself one thing. Don't rush this to get it done sooner. Choose the artist you actually want, even if it means waiting a little longer, whether it's me or not. And whether it ends up being me or not, or being another artist, it's always worth waiting for the one that feels right. Excuse me, I know I'm skipping sentences, reading them wrong. I've been filming all day, so I apologize, okay? But my point being here is, from the Phoenix tattoo guy, you are pointing at what they said they value. You are then pointing at why what they said they value is exactly what you do, hence why you are more expensive, okay? And then you leave them on the perspective shift, okay? Because what will happen is most of them will say, yeah, you're right. Okay, let's have the consultation. Or, yeah, you're right. I know. Let's book it. Or they say, yeah, completely understand. I'm just going to go think about it. They're still scared, but you've planted the seed. They're like, fuck, they're right. This goes against everything I've just said I am, right? Remember, all these characteristics of labeling, you put a lot of thought into your decision. This is all how it builds up then. This internal tension in their mind where they realize, why am I so scared of making the right decision, right? They start to realize how rational they're being, okay? So that's the perspective shift. So let's go number 2. So this was the geometric guy who liked the flow, the detail. He saw a lot of terrible ones that obviously were done in 1 or 2 sessions, etc. All right. So he said, honestly, that's too much right now, or honestly, that's more than I expected. La la la. Can I share a perspective with you? Firstly, I really appreciate you being honest. Earlier, you mentioned how many badly executed geometric sleeves you've seen, especially ones that don't flow with the arm. The reason those exist is because they're usually rushed or simplified to keep the cost down. I think deep down you know that, which is why you haven't committed to an artist yet, which is a wise choice. So, hey, I'm calling you out on your bullshit, but I'm going to compliment you again quickly, right? So you don't hate me. The reason my prices are noticeably higher is because my price reflects the extra time it takes to layer in the depth and custom fit the design to your anatomy. Exactly what they said they want and value, which results in a higher quality piece. Okay, you're just reminding them of what they actually value and how they're about to contradict everything they've just said, right? And then you can see it's the same closing argument here. If it's still not affordable for you right now, that's completely okay. Just when you promise yourself, la la la. Okay. So you can see here, we're just reminding them of their own words. We're showing that you are exactly what they value, and that we're inadvertently, right, calling out their irrationality. Okay. And as I mentioned, I know this is hard to do. This is the whole point. Sales, learning to be good at sales is not difficult. In fact, most of you watching this, if not all of you, are naturally going to be good at sales. Why? Because sales is about being intuitive. It's about being emotional. It's about being empathetic. It's about being a good listener. It's about really connecting to someone, right? It's the opposite of the movies. Hence why you guys would make such great salespeople. What stops you guys the most and what loses you guys the most sales is you don't have the balls to sit in this uncomfortable conversation, which is completely fine. I completely understand. It took me a long, long time to do this too, because I'm naturally like you guys too, in terms of my mannerisms, right? I'm an extreme introvert. I have good emotional intelligence, but I find it hard. I don't like conflict, right? More or less. Okay. So my main point I want to give to you, and I'll cover this more at the end, is you just have to understand that the uncomfortability you feel, the tension you're feeling, is not directed on you. It's internal, right? They are thinking about all the contradictions. Remember, you're just asking questions. It's their own words, right? And I promise you, they will really appreciate this after they make the better decision. Okay. I just want you guys to know that. Just know this is not going to come naturally to you, and it will take time because it will be unnatural. I have a closing argument for this at the bottom here to really explain this to you. Okay. So let's go conversation 3, which is the surrealism person, right? The architect. So this is how I would use that framework to help them overcome their irrational objection about money. You mentioned this tattoo as a way of capturing how you see the world and what you've lived through. You also mentioned that your biggest fear is losing that meaning and translation, right? The reason my pricing is what it is because I spend more time in that translation process, making sure the final piece still feels like you, not just my interpretation, which always results in a better result. Okay. Once again, we're just reminding them of what they said they value. Okay. So if it's still not affordable for you right now, la la la. Okay. You get the point. So the main thing is, not only do we have the information to present this perspective shift, right? To be harsh, to call them out on their irrationalities, but we also have built the trust and relationship to get away with doing this. You have to understand, as I mentioned, you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. This is why it's so important to take the extra time to talk to all these clients, because just think about the compounding results that you'll have if you do this for a year, right? I promise you, within a year, you'll never worry about clients ever again. And then it'll be a case of just raising your prices and experimenting with your art and growing your brand, etc. Right? I just want to remind you guys of how important this is. And you might think that, oh, this is not the best use of my time. I can promise you it is. If you know your clientele inside and out better than them, and you have this skill and you have the knowledge to turn someone from hesitant to super excited, you have a skill that's going to set you up to make money and a living for life. Okay. So that is how you leave it on a perspective shift. Okay. So let's go the other route now, which is isolating the objection through clarity. So what we just did was we got to the root of the anchor number. Okay. And then what we can do now is, let's say they say, I can't afford it, or it's like, no, I had no number in mind. It's just more than I thought. Okay. Or it's more than I was willing to pay, or whatever. You can isolate the objection. So what this means is just like making sure that the only reason is that they don't have the money, or that they think it's a lot of money. Okay. So you can say, okay, I understand. It's a big investment. Money aside for a second. Do you truly feel I'm the right artist for you? Okay. And then they say yes, 100%. And then you say, okay, what in particular makes you confident that I'm the right person? And then they say the reason, right? Which is just a verbal reinforcement of why you are more valuable in their own words. You're just getting them to remind themselves out loud of why you cost more money, right? Of why you're more valuable, of why they're even talking to you in the first place, and why they haven't bought yet with other people. Okay. Yes, you might have already covered this earlier, but it's important to pull it out of them again. Okay. Because that's going to be top of mind when you then isolate the objection. Okay. So can I ask, is it just the total amount that's the issue, or is it more about paying it all at once? And then they could literally just say, oh, it's about paying it all at once. And you say, okay, perfect. Well, what if we broke it down into 3 parts? Or what if we finance it this way? Whichever way you finance. The main point is, if you don't do this, you would have lost a client just due to them not realizing that they can finance it, right? Or they can break it into multiple payments, or that each session costs $1,000 and they don't have to pay 3,000 up front, right? For example, so instead of 3,000 up front, it might be 3 sessions at $1,000 each, spread over a few weeks. And I'd make sure that the tattoo looks really good after each session so that you don't have to wait until it's fully finished to be proud of it. Does that feel more manageable? Oh, I didn't know that was an option. Yeah, that would work way better. Okay, perfect. Let's map out a timeline that works best for your budget on our consultation together and see when the right time would be for you to get started, right? So there you go. That's objection, overcoming a money objection by just getting clarity and then turning it into a logistics thing, okay? Now, the other thing I want you to note is if you say money aside for a second, do you truly feel I'm the right artist for you? And they don't say anything close to yes, 100%, oh yeah, definitely, I have no doubt about it. They'll say, yeah, maybe, or I think so. Then the objection isn't money, right? It's they lack trust with you somewhere, right? Or they have a certain fear around something else. So this is why it's a great question to ask, because if you isolate the objection through clarity and they don't say yes 100%, then you're dealing with a couple of objections here, right? So let's say they say, I think so. You say, you think so? It's not as, doesn't sound as certain as I think we'd both like. Is there anything you feel that I'm missing that would make you fully confident in this decision? And they say, well, honestly, this, or this, right? So that is what's called looping, where it's like, okay, money aside for a second. Am I the right person for you? I don't know. Okay, what makes you say I don't know? Well, it's because of this reason. Oh, okay, so you say you don't know because you're not sure if I'm going to fully involve you in the process. Yeah, that's right. Well, this is exactly how I do consultations. You'll be fully involved. Oh, amazing. Okay, cool. So money aside for a second then, and the consultation process aside, do you think I'm the right person for you? Yeah, 100%. Okay, boom. And now you're back to here, right? It's called looping. It's like they say no, you go back, you overcome that objection, you figure out clarity on what the problem is there. Then you come back, you loop around back to the real objection, or the next objection, which is money. Okay. I know that you're not going to become a master objection handler in one video, but you will have all the ammunition and understanding you need from this video to definitely have a great start. And honestly, if you do these conversations really well, you should have very little objections too, right? Because they realize, oh, it makes complete sense for me to go to this artist, okay? Because you've once again crossed off the why, the what they look for in an artist, price versus value, and their fear, etc. Okay. So sorry, continuing back down. Where are we? We're here. Okay, so isolating objection through clarity. Okay, and then you just break down the payments, etc. All right. So bonus one, objection one, some variation of another artist quoted me cheaper. All right, let's say you get this. Now, disclaimer: most people who say this are probably cheap, rude clients. But I have seen some people who say this, and what they really mean is, I really want to go with you, but I can't afford you. Can you help me out? Okay, so the main thing I want to give as well, especially in sales and marketing, is you never want to assume, because assuming means less bookings. Oh, they must be rude because they asked the same thing as rude people. Oh, they must be a time waster because they asked for the price. No, that is just you being lazy about attacking this conversation and really giving it a go and really giving this person the time to listen to them and understand them, etc. Okay, my point being is never assume. All right, sometimes it's the driest, most boring, weirdest clients that end up becoming the highest paying and best. I've heard countless stories. Okay, so really just want you to understand, just this is once again going back to the representative heuristic. If you see someone saying, yo, what's the price? You're like, oh, seems like a time waster, must be a time waster. Most of the time you're right, but I want you to try to not assume and really give them the time of day, because it really just could be a lack of education. Okay. So yeah, I really want to, for example, if they say another artist quoted me cheaper, sometimes what they mean is, I really want to go with you, but I can't afford you. Can you help me out? Also, side tip, don't just ignore difficult clients. Use rude, dry conversations with objections as training to sharpen your sales skills and patience, right? If you get a, yo, how much for this? Or yo, you're too expensive. Or another artist quoted me cheaper. Don't get mad, right? I would just laugh at it. Of course you're going to get that, but use it to see, well, how much could I help this person? How much could I shift their perspective? How far could I take this conversation, right? Because if you can even shift one of these people's perspectives, as I say here, you can shift a great client's perspective with your eyes closed, right? If you think about it, if you go from someone who is the rudest or the least informed or the worst client, and you shift their perspective into becoming a great client, because you gave yourself the challenge. You know what? I'm going to go for this. I'm going to actually follow these frameworks that Ushin's taught me. I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to see if I can actually shift this conversation instead of just ignoring it, right? Obviously, if you have the time, okay? It will sharpen your skills so that when a great conversation comes along, like these 3 examples, you'll very easily close that deal, right? As I mentioned before, the whole point of sharpening your sales skills is to not let the great clients fall through the cracks, rather than trying to get the 1 out of 10s to become a 10 out of 10 client. Okay. But just a little side tip. Okay. Give it a go. Challenge yourself. You'd be very surprised on what you can accomplish when you don't care about the outcome, right? This is another thing. Because you have no assumption of, or you have no, you have no expectation of them actually ever becoming a client, that sense of detachment will actually allow you to go in this flow state of having a great conversation, and you'd be surprised about the outcome. Okay, continuing on. Objection handling flow for if someone says another artist quoted me cheaper. Okay, I appreciate you being upfront and honest with that info. Can I ask why you didn't book with them? And they say, oh, I just wanted to explore more options before making a decision. Or they didn't have XYZ, right? They didn't have this, or their flow wasn't great, or I didn't like the way that they designed this, or they didn't involve their client in the process, XYZ, right? Okay, can I ask you a pretty direct question? Money aside, which artist would you choose out of all your options you mentioned you looked at? And if they say you, which most of them should, and if they don't, then you say, okay, great, we'll go to that other person. Okay, but most of them will say, well, you. And you can say any reason in particular. As I mentioned before, I know this is direct, but remember, they have the wrong perspective, especially if you've just had a great conversation with them. You really don't want to lose the sale from them just making an irrational decision, okay? Which once again contradicts everything they've already said, okay? Okay, can I ask you a pretty direct question? Money aside, which artist would you choose out of all of your options you mentioned you looked at? You. Any reason in particular? Then they give the reason. Right. So can I share one final perspective with you on this decision? Yes. Then closing perspective shift statement. Okay. So you say, you mentioned that you value this, this, and this, and you didn't book with them because of this, this, and this. Well, this is why I'm more expensive. You're about to go to them for those reasons. Whatever you do, make a long-term decision. Whether you go to me or not, doesn't matter. You get the point, right? You go back up there. So that's just a little bonus of flow of how you can overcome that. But as I mentioned, disclaimer, I wouldn't worry too much if it doesn't work, for example, okay? Because it's quite a rude thing to say. Anyway, these are examples of the full conversational flow from the very first interaction to them paying. As I mentioned before, this doesn't have to be all through the DMs. In fact, it would be quite rare if it did happen all in the DMs, right? Maybe if you have a small piece and you only take bookings through the DMs, you could. But I highly recommend getting on Zoom consultations, especially if you don't have bookings for a month or 2 months. You have the time to do it, right? I know you don't want to do it, but your time is not as valuable as you think it is, right? If you're not booked out for even a month, the single most valuable thing you can do other than improving your work and making content is talking to potential clients, right? So drop the ego. You don't even have bookings for a month. Talk to people, okay? For a bigger or very intricate piece that needs consultations, for bigger or very intricate pieces that need consultations, I'm trying to build trust and get 2 pieces of info in the DM, for example, so that number 1, when I tell them the price range, they have a better understanding of why I charge a lot. And number 2, I have the info I need to present my prices and process in a way that aligns with what they value. Now, once again, it doesn't have to be DMs, could be emails, could be a phone call, whatever. It's just the sales conversation in general, okay? And I've mentioned this multiple times throughout this throughout this recording. Sorry, I'm losing my mind now. My sole purpose then is to book a consultation with them. If they are hesitant, I can overcome the objection in the DMs there, or mention how there is not pressure on commitment on the consultation, and that we can just chat more to make sure I'm the right decision for them long term. And then handle the main objections on the consultation call. The reason I say this again is because remember, they can't hide behind time and a lack of picking up on tone through DMs. If it's a face-to-face thing, you pick up on the hesitation, the tonality. They're like, when they say yes, but it sounds like a no, when they're nodding, but their head's down, all these little things, which you intuitively already know. That's why it's good to equip yourself with these frameworks and these understandings and these questions and these rebuttals for objections and perspective shifts, but also to get as many face-to-face conversations, whether it's Zoom or in person, because you'll also be able to easily pick up on body language, and you won't give them the time to come up with, once again, a logical explanation for an emotional decision, okay? So Bonus 2 is I have for you is reframing fear of pain, because I know a lot of artists get this too from their clients, like, I'm so excited, I have all the money in the world, but I'm just so scared of the pain, right? This is probably the easiest one to reframe and get people in. Okay, so for example, let's say they want to get a tattoo on the ribs. Once again, we want to reframe their perspective around pain, right? So honestly, it's probably a good thing that you have such high expectations about how painful it's going to be, right? It's like, it's actually good that you're scared. It means that you should book, right? It contradicts, right? It's reframing their perspective. Honestly, it's a good thing you have such high expectations on how painful it's going to be, because it can never live up to the fear we build ourselves, right? That anticipation, okay? The anticipation of the event is always scarier, right? For example, me going up on stage to give that presentation, shitting my pants before, once I got up there, I was actually okay, right? You've had that countless times as well, right? It's always the anticipation. It's just our primal brain, our amygdala, trying to prevent us from going into uncharted territories and therefore have a higher chance of survival. Okay, so I can maybe don't go into a rant like that on looking biology to your clients, but you get the point. Okay, it can never live up to the fear we build ourselves. So I can almost guarantee you that it's going to be less painful than you think it will be, but of course it will sting a little, right? You don't want to lie. Okay, and then you can explain it, right? You can start to verbalize what it is, so they can really start to visualize it and kind of rationalize it, right? The pain is a sharp, fuzzy, or burning feeling, but most people find it manageable and totally worth it once they see the finished tattoo. Okay, so as you can see, a great example of reframing people on the pain. Okay, so the main framework for handling objections, right? I've given you specific examples, conversations that are very highly likely or objections that are highly likely to happen to you, etc. But what happens if you get a very peculiar objection? Which I'm going to give you some examples of. Well, the main thing is, when handling any objection, you follow the same framework or the same way of thinking on how to help them overcome that. Okay, as I say here, you will get very specific objections, some of which I can't possibly cover all in one video. So instead of trying to learn scripts on exactly how to reply to every single conversation or every single objection, let me give you a psychological framework to help you guide that conversation where it needs to go. So let's say someone has an irrational belief or an objection, or they're saying a contradiction, or they're just thinking about something the wrong way. First, we want to identify what that is. Okay, so what belief do they have? What objection do they have? Identify the irrational belief causing the objection, right? If they say, oh, it's too expensive, what is the irrational belief behind that? It's that they think that you should be worth this because of what they've heard from this artist. That's the irrational belief. Or let's say, oh, I'll give you an example of a specific one, which I'm going to get into, but, oh, I can't start this now because I can't afford the full sleeve. So I'll save up for the whole sleeve and then start, right? Where does that irrational belief come from? It comes from them thinking that the sleeve is only going to look good when it's fully finished. Hence, they need to save up all the money. But we know, as artists, we finish the half sleeve first or the top half first, right? So you always leave it looking good, okay? So my point being is, if they have an objection, there's an irrational belief causing them to have that perspective, right? That objection. So step 2 is to then ask yourself what fear stems from this, right? As I mentioned, for example, their objection is, I need to save up for the whole tattoo. I don't have the money for the whole tattoo. That's the objection. Their irrational belief is that they have to have all the money saved up for the tattoo because the tattoo is only going to look good when it's fully finished, and that's where the fear stems from. Their fear is that if they start the tattoo and they don't finish it, it's going to look horrible on their arm, right? So then step 3 is to ask yourself what perspective they need to have instead. So, hey, why do they have the objection they have? Why are they scared? What's the fear behind this, right? And then ask yourself, how would they not be scared? What perspective shift would they need to have instead? For example, in that scenario, they need to understand that you don't have to have all the money saved up to start a sleeve, because you'll finish half the sleeve top to bottom first. So you'll go away with a really beautiful half sleeve, even if you only have half the money, right? That's the perspective, or the lack of the shift they need to have, or the education they're missing, right? Again, this is why knowing all of this and talking to your clients gives you content ideas too, right? So then step 4 is you want to pretend you are them and ask yourself questions to get to that new perspective. Now you're probably thinking, how do I do this in the moment? You don't. You fuck it up. You watch the call back. You think, okay, you figure out, why did they have that perspective? What could I have said? How could I have helped them shift? Then the next time it comes up, you can then help them. You can help the next person overcome that, right? Because you know where it's stemming from. Okay, so what you want to do is pretend you are them, and then ask yourself questions to get to that new perspective, right? So then go and ask the questions, and then use a shared perspective framework. So my point is, pretend you're them, then say, okay, what questions could I ask myself to then get me to think in the right way? And then you go and ask those questions to the client, so that you are insinuating through their answers, they realize their contradictions or their rationality. And then you do, hey, can I share a perspective on this? And you just say what everyone is thinking in the room, and you leave them on a positive perspective, right? So let me show you this framework in action, okay? So let's look at a real example from one of my students, Pedro. So he closed a 25,000 AIs deal, which is $4,500 for a full sleeve, right? And this is from one of the ads we set up with him and the content. The client was excited, booked the first 2 sessions. Then the very next day, he gets this message. So this is what Pedro sent to me. Hey, we had a consultation in my studio on Saturday. We sketched some stuff. I got him super excited to get the tattoo. We closed the deal, 25,000 AIs for the full sleeve. It would take about 6 full days. He even scheduled the first 2 sessions for October. And then all of a sudden, he sent me this message today in the morning. Hey, Pedro, good morning. How are you? So here's the thing. We're going to need to make a change in the plan. Honestly, I don't feel confident splitting this amount with you right now. I'd rather save up the money first so we can book the tattoo. That means we'll have to push this to next year. Okay? So you can already see, right? There's a irrational belief around splitting the money, around saving up. Okay? I'm sure the work is going to turn out amazing. I already have a lot of great ideas connected to my life. So this is another insinuation. He's already isolated the objection for us, right? I have full trust in you. You are the right artist for me, okay? And I know it's going to look incredible, but I just can't commit to this financial arrangement on such a short time frame. I ran the numbers, and it actually took me a whole year to save the 10K. I already have to get things started. So for the full amount, we're talked about 25K. It's going to take me a lot more than a year to save that up. Since the plan was to finish the project in about 6 months, I just can't make that type of commitment right now. Thanks for your understanding. Excuse me. Let's hold off for now. Once I've saved up a bit more and feel more secure, we can get back to this conversation. I feel more secure, saved up more, right? All of these signs are in there of what you need to say to shift their perspective, right? Sounds go. I'm sure you said sound good. Okay. So most artists would say, okay, no problem, and lose the sale. But we dug deeper. Okay. I asked Pedro, what was the client's irrational belief? Well, he believed he needed to have all the money saved up before he could start. You can see it sprinkled in there, okay? Where did that fear come from? He didn't believe the tattoo would look good until it was 100% finished, okay? He didn't say that, but that's what he means, okay? So I coached Pedro to get him on a call and ask him some Socratic questions, right? Is there a reason you would really like to get this project fully done in 6 months? Well, and then they will answer. Well, what would their answer be? Well, it's because I don't want to wait 2 years, because then my arm will look unfinished and terrible for 2 years. Oh, so you think that the arm is going to look terrible until it's finished? Yeah, is that not true? No. We're going to do this, and this. Oh, okay. Okay, so is money the only thing preventing you from getting started now? Yeah, it is. Now that I know that. All right. So you see what I mean is you want to ask yourself, what is the question I would ask to get them to not only say out loud what their problem is that I know that they have, to then be able to ask another question to help them rationalize or give them the information that they need to realize or have the perspective that we want them to have. That example being, it's going to look shit before it's finished. No, it's not. Oh, really? Okay, I'm fine then. Okay. Hence why I would ask, is there a reason you would really like to get this project fully done in 6 months, right? Is money the only thing preventing you from getting started? Okay. We're asking the questions to get them to have the perspective shifts we want them to have. Then Pedro reframed the situation. He explained that healing process would take longer than 6 months anyway, and that he showed the client how amazing the tattoo would look even when it was only half finished. Okay. He shifted the client's vision from a scary 25K commitment to an exciting first step. The client came back around and the deal was on again. Okay, so you can see here, Pedro sent me a text. Yeah, I'm going to try understand that on our first session. But the important thing is that he came back around and the deal is on once again. Thanks a lot, man. Would not know what to do if it wasn't for your advice. We didn't argue with him. We didn't push. We also didn't accept their message at face value, okay, which is what a lot of artists will do. And it's not because you believe them most of the time. It's because you are scared of the conflict and tension. that would arise from you asking these questions. Okay. So we understood that client's irrational fear, and he guided him to a new perspective. So I just want to make the point again of like how valuable this is. This simple framework alone of just understanding how to overcome an objection for this very specific example made one of my clients $4,600 that would have been lost. Okay. So please watch this video multiple times, learn it off by heart, figure out how you can say all the things I'm saying and the frameworks I'm using in your own tonality, right? I promise you'll be unstoppable, okay, when it comes to booking people in, which means you'll have to do less marketing, right? Because you won't have that pressure of trying to get 10 inquiries every day, because you only need 3 to book 2 people in, okay? So as I said before, the main goal is to always get into the mind of the client. When they say something irrational or have a certain belief, ask yourself, why do they think that? Where does it stem from? Then pretend you are them and reason with yourself in your mind to get to the conclusion you want. Then think about the questions you would need to ask them to do that exact reasoning themselves, okay? As I mentioned before, if you get a peculiar objection, you fuck it up the first time on the Zoom call, you then rewatch the Zoom call, and then you figure out how you would navigate that. You can even DM me on Instagram if you want as well, okay? And I can help you. And as I mentioned before, if you think these conversational skills don't compound like marketing does, right, like referrals do, that simple reply alone saved Pedro 4,600 tattoo booking. Imagine how many more sales you'll make over your career if you really master the art of psychology and communication, okay? Just want to make this point again, okay? There is so much money falling through the cracks for you, and so many great clients that you didn't know would be great clients falling through the cracks because you don't have the right frameworks to have a great conversation. Okay. So another little bonus here is I need to think about it, as I mentioned before. Okay. So how to get them from here to the sequence above, overcoming the real objection. Okay. I need to think about it. No problem. I completely understand. It's a big decision. You're clearly someone who doesn't rush into things, which I respect. Acknowledge, compliment, connect. Okay. Just so I understand, is it the design you're unsure about, the timing, or just the investment? Right. So now we're isolating the objection. And then they say, oh, it's just the timing. Okay. And then you say, if it's just the timing, okay, so can you walk me through when you think would be a good time? Oh, I'm not sure. I need to do this and this and this. If they say this, then, okay, can I ask you an honest question? Is the money okay? The money aside, do you think I'd be, you go through that thing again. Okay. You can pick up on the tonality and tension of someone when it's not the actual thing, right? Because if it is the timing, they'll tell you the exact timing, the date, and you say, oh, okay, well, if you're saying you have to wait till after summer, well, listen, I don't have a free consultation until April. So let's book a consultation for April, have the consultation. And then if you want to get it done, I'm booked out until the end of summer anyway, so we can book you in after that. So how about we meet next week for a consultation in April? And then if you're happy, we can book later on. Okay, cool. So now you've moved them along. See what I mean? You've turned it into a logistics thing. But for example, say, oh, I need to think about it. You say, just so I understand, is it the design you're unsure about, the timing, or just the investment? Actually, it's the investment. Okay. When you say in the investment, is it, do you feel it's too much, or is it too expensive, or it's just, you just can't afford it all right now? And then you're back into that money objection. Okay. So going back up here, sorry. And then you continue with the framework, right? So getting the anchor, or clarifying, or isolating the objection, etc. All right. I know I'm zooming through this. You can see it's been an hour and 20 minutes here. As I mentioned before, watch this a couple of times. Okay. So bonus 2, this is a great one too for you guys, is a follow-up message. All right. So most of you guys are not doing follow-ups properly. Either you're bugging people too much, you're asking the wrong questions, or you're not following up at all because you think, oh, I don't want to annoy them. Okay. So here's how you can get rid of both of those feelings. First, understand when someone ghosts you or stops replying, they feel bad. Okay. So when you follow up with something like, hey, did you see my last message? Or hey, did you just bumping this, etc., and they don't reply again, they have now ghosted you twice and feel twice as bad. All right. And I have gotten this information from clients, and actually from artists as well who've done this to other businesses. But clients will literally go out of their way to book with another artist just to avoid the awkward, uncomfortable conversation with you after they have just ghosted you once or twice, right? So instead, drop the ego, okay? Not everyone is being rude. People forget, right? People have jobs. People have a life, okay? Many of you watching this have ghosted me in my DMs as I've been helping you with something, right? And I know it's not personal. I know you're not rude, right? You got busy. It happens. So drop the ego. It's the same with a lot of these clients, okay? if you by like dropping the ego in all of these situations in sales, is just going to result in you getting more bookings, right? It's really your ego that holds you guys back so much. Okay. And this doesn't mean that you're like super cocky or confident. It's also about like, oh, I don't want to annoy them, or, oh, this person seems not that interesting, or, oh, this person seems lazy, or I assume this person's not serious, right? That's your ego, um, blocking you from doing something uncomfortable, or going the extra mile, right? Because you don't feel that that person is worth it. Hence, you feel more valuable, hence your ego. Okay. We want to feel at the same level. Okay. So once again, as I mentioned, I know you're not rude. For all of you guys that are watching who've ghosted me in the past, you got busy or it wasn't the right time. It happens. Okay. We want to emulate that same forgiving attitude to your clients. Otherwise, you will lose clients who actually really want to go with you, but they have burned the bridge with you, but feel they have burned the bridge with you already. Okay. So we want to let them know that they haven't burnt the bridge with you. Okay. That if they've ghosted you, it's totally fine. Okay. So here's the main follow-up template my students use, right? That I teach my tattoo students. Okay. Hey, John, I know life gets busy and priorities change. Okay. I just want to let you know that I really love this XYZ idea. Just go back there. Idea you have, and would love to have it in my portfolio, right? Or would be honored to have it in my portfolio. In loads of different ways you can say this. I have really enjoyed our conversation. And when you do feel finally ready to commit, please don't hesitate to reach out. I hope you have a lovely Christmas, summer, etc. Okay. So let me break this down for you bit by bit here. You'll see there's things highlighted. So the first highlight in yellow. I know life gets busy and priorities change. What this is doing is we are throwing it like a life buoy to them, saying, hey, it's totally cool that you ghosted me. I'm giving you something to latch onto as an excuse as to why you ghosted me. Oh yeah, I'm so sorry, man. Life did get busy. My kids, this or this happened, or my job, right? You're giving them something to latch onto, an excuse to reach back out without feeling uncomfortable or awkward, right? I know life gets busy and priorities change. In other words, totally cool you ghosted me. I just want to let you know that I really love this XYZ idea, right? So you reiterate to them that you were listening, and you also playing on their ego here, right? And you would have and would love to have this in my portfolio, would be honored to have this in my portfolio. You're showing that you appreciate and you care about their idea and them, okay? I have really enjoyed our conversation. You then remind them of the great conversation you guys had. And when you do feel finally ready to commit, so now we're playing on their ego in terms of you're not ready, right? A lot of, especially males, will reach back out and say, no, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. Sorry, I just got busy. Let's do it, right? So when you finally feel ready to commit, you're calling them out on being scared, basically, but they don't feel that from you, okay? And you're just reiterating to them that they're being irrational. If you've had a great conversation, they ghost you, okay? Please don't hesitate to reach out. I hope you have a lovely Christmas, summer. So this green is giving them like a season or a time frame to reach back out, basically. So I hope you have, for example, let's say it's November. You say, I hope you have a lovely Christmas. Instead of saying, I hope you have a lovely, I hope you have a lovely day, right? That is, there's no kind of subconscious end time or timeline, right? If you say, I hope you have a lovely Christmas, what you're doing is subconsciously placing in their mind that they should think about you after Christmas again, right? For example, if you say, I hope you have a lovely summer, and it's like May or whatever, instead of saying, I hope you have a lovely year, which is saying, oh, I'll talk to you next year, by saying, I hope you have a lovely summer, you're subconsciously planting in their mind to think about you in the summer. Now, this is kind of woo-woo, but I have seen it work. And, all of the rest of every single other thing I've taught you is completely scientific and backed. And this is the one woo-woo thing you'll learn. But I think it works, and I think it's a good subconscious thing to do. And another thing as well is make it sound like you, all right? Do not copy me on all of this wording, all right? It can be pretty similar, but just write it like you, because that's how you're going to remember what to say, right? Because if you keep like writing this and you're like, oh, what do I say, that, this and that, but if you write it in your own tonality and your own vocabulary and natural language, you'll remember all of this more, because it would be something you just naturally say. Okay. So let me give you another student example. This is George here. So George is one of my favorite people in the world. He's a tattoo artist based in Monolith in New York. Fantastic artist. And he had the same issue. He had a lot of people who were ghosting him or not replying, etc. As you can see here, I'll actually just zoom in on this. He said, he sent me emails. He said, hey, all these people ghosted me. I said, okay, I see that your follow-up is like, hey, bumping this, or hey, following up. I said, don't say that. Try this template instead. I explained to him psychologically why. And then you can see here that George said this, but in his own words, which is great. Hey, brother, just circling back, no, life gets busy. Still interested in moving forward? If the timing's not right yet, no pressure. When you're ready, I'm here. Real work takes time, and so does the decision to commit to it. Let me know, right? He's covering the same ground as this one here, more or less, right? But it's way more natural. I love this. I love this. I love this paragraph. Sounds super like George as well. For anyone knows George, you'd know that. So you can see, hey, bro, thanks for reaching again. I'm sorry, I have been busy the last few days, right? So they literally just forgot to reply, okay? But tomorrow I have time, so I'm going to send you all the info so we can move forward. Have a nice day. I appreciate the message, right? That's all it takes, okay? Of course, brother, I'm here to help. Anything you need, talk soon. And that person ended up booking, and you can actually see as well, he said here, half of them started the conversation again. I think he sent me 20 emails. So he got 10 client conversations going again. And I think he booked 5 or 6 of them. Okay. So just by shifting that follow-up message alone, George booked 6 more people. Okay. And I'm not going to tell George's prices, but George is quite expensive. So that's a lot of money. All right. My point being is these little tweaks and these little understandings and this knowledge of communication and these sales skills, they go so far and they stick with you forever. No matter how much the algorithm changes, or how, if Instagram gets shut down or whatever, what no one can take away from you is this, right? Which is understanding human behavior and psychology, which is why everything I teach you guys and have taught you guys through this whole course is based on fundamental human psychology, so that it is timeless rather than just strategic short-term tactics that change all the time. Okay. So I'm going to leave you guys on this note, because fuck me, it's dark outside. My tongue is dry. Excuse my French again, but I'm starting to lose my train of thought. So I don't want the quality of this video to diminish. You can also hear by my voice. Oh my God. But anyway, I love this. I love talking about this. This is my art, psychological. I could talk about this all day. In fact, I literally do for my job. So anyway, let me leave you on this, because this is what all of you guys are thinking right now, especially if you haven't done this before. This all feels uncomfortable, unnatural. This feels really weird. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this. I can already feel the tension right now and uncomfortability. And once again, I'm going to reframe your perspective, right? It's supposed to feel uncomfortable because it is new to you, right? If it felt comfortable, it wouldn't be new, right? It might feel unnatural, but what that feeling really is you not being accustomed to confrontation and tension, right? The reason it feels uncomfortable is because you've never done it before, okay? It is a skill. It is not a intuitive thing you do. What most people think is like, oh, you're born a salesman. No, you're absolutely not. It's a skill. It's a skill. Sorry, it's a communication skill, okay? So it's going to feel uncomfortable. Okay. It did for me for a long, long time. And sometimes now it even still does. But it just gets more like, the more you get exposed to it and the more you do it, the more normal it gets, right? Like anything, like the first time you went to ride a bike, super scary. And then, now you can do it without even thinking. I hope all of you can do that. But anyway, the point is, the reason it feels uncomfortable, or the reason it's going to feel unnatural, because it is because it is new, right? And the unnatural feeling, or the uncomfortable feeling, is also it stems from you not being accustomed to confrontation and tension. Okay. You are not used to sitting with a client who is verbally and obviously contradicting themselves every second, right? It is really awkward. And you have to let them do that. And you have to let them realize how irrational they're being. And you also have to ask the hard questions to get them to say out loud what everyone is thinking in the room, right? The obvious thing of, oh, you're being completely irrational. Okay. That is what stops you guys from really getting good at this, is being okay with the uncomfortability, being okay with the silence, being okay with that tension. Because remember, the tension is not between your mind and their mind. It's between their mind and their mind, right? They are going through what's called cognitive dissonance, as I've mentioned before, which is where we believe in one thing, but we're acting the complete opposite way, right? More or less. Okay, but you have to understand the tension in the air you might feel is not tension between you and them. It's an internal tension they are feeling between what they say and their actions. They are not aligning, what they say and their actions. They are not aligning, and they are feeling cognitive dissonance, which is mental tension, as I've mentioned before, okay? You are simply asking questions. Their replies are what are creating the tension, right? This is really important for you to understand. They are creating the tension themselves. They're saying out loud, they're basically just reminding themselves out loud of how irrational they're being, okay? Because the answer to what the wise decision, because the answer to what the wise decision, because the answer to what the wise decision to make is gets more and more obvious throughout the more and more questions you ask, right? Which results in more and more tension as they are still not acting in accordance with what is wise, even though we all want to feel wise. If they haven't booked with you or if they haven't made a decision, that's how it starts to feel more and more tension, more and more awkward, because they keep saying, yeah, you're right, and they're still not acting in accordance. So you have to get down to the root cause to get to a point where there's no objections and they realize the best thing to do is to book with you, okay? And even if they go away and they don't book, then if you've done this properly, they will always come back. They always come back, okay? So yeah, you're simply asking questions. Their replies are what is creating the tension, okay? Because as I mentioned, the answer to what the wise decision to make gets more and more obvious, all right? So when you eventually share a perspective, okay, hey, can I share a perspective with you? You're just verbalizing what everyone is already thinking, right? They're already like, through their answers, they're like, God, why? I'm being completely stupid right now. And then when you say, can I share a perspective? You say, yeah. And then you just say, hey, I know we're both thinking this, you know, this is what I recommend you do. And you said you value this, yet you're thinking about this. Please don't do this, right? That's more or less it, okay? So as I mentioned, you're just repeating their words, okay? And this is another really important thing. You are not their opponent, okay? It's not a battle. It's not a psychological battle. Like, you are their guide. You're on the same team, okay? You act as a mirror. You are bouncing back the obvious flaws in their decision making, but they do not blame you for the tension. They blame their internal dissonance, as I mentioned before, right? All you're doing with these questions is you're just acting as a mirror for them to see themselves in a clearer light, and also to see their contradictions and issues in a clearer light, okay? So learning the frameworks and scripts and dialogue is easy. Honestly, it is. You watch this a couple of times, you'll have a pretty good idea of how to navigate most conversations. The real skill you have to learn to get the most out of communication is sitting in the uncomfortability of watching a client contradict themselves blatantly and asking the harsh, direct questions that make this contradiction even more obvious. That's the hardest part, guys. That's the hardest part, okay? And through exposure, it will get easier and easier, okay? It will become normalized. It will be normal for you, okay? The more you do it, like anything. But remember, you're doing all of this to help them make a better decision, not to get their money, okay? For example, if you ask, money aside, which artist would you go to? And they say the other artist, then you tell them they should go with them, right? If the artist is cheaper and they would prefer to go with them, then you say, okay, well, you should go with them. Don't talk to me, right? But what happens is they're like, oh, well, I don't know. Because the reason they're really talking with you is because they would rather go with you, because you are better, right? Whatever. My point being is, just to give you an example, you give them the best advice for them, right? If they take your advice about saving up before investing to avoid short-term gratification, save up for a year, and then end up going to another artist they love more and not you, good. You did your job of helping them make the best decision. Remember, your job is to help people, not take their money. This is why this is not selling. This is not sales. This is helping, right? You're guiding people to making a better decision. You will never feel salesy or sleazy, okay? Because you have their best interests at heart. And when their best interests at heart and the best decision for them is you, that's when you have to grow the balls, sit in the uncomfortability, and help them realize their rationalities, okay? Just remember, if people are reaching out to you, it's for a good reason. You are valuable and they see that, okay? People are reaching out to you for a reason. Remind yourself that you have value, okay? And that, guys, in a nutshell, is how you guide a sales conversation. Whether it's a DM, whether it's an email, whether it's a Zoom consultation, that is how you do it. One more thing I want to mention again, guys, is if you do not have bookings for at least a month and you're not doing consultations for free, stop. Do consultations for free. Talk to as many people as you can. Have these, 2 or 3 back and forths in the DMs to weed out the interesting people with a lot of depth in their answers to the kind of not so serious people, right, who don't have a lot of depth in their answers. Then when you have a semi-decent conversation with someone, book them in for a consultation. And yeah, you might spend an hour with them or 45 minutes and they don't book, but you're learning, you're improving your sales skills, okay? And it's really important you do this, because if you're like, oh, well, I don't want to waste my time, you have no bookings. You've no bookings for a month. You only have bookings for a week or 2 weeks. There's nothing better you could be doing than talking to as many potential clients as possible. Hence this course, right? If you want to, if you're booked out for 3, 4, 5 months and you want to expand your brand and charge higher prices and guest spot and travel all over the world, then our long-term branding and personal branding mentorship is for you. But for everyone watching this course, just remember you're watching this course for a reason, guys, right? I'm reshaping your perspective here again, reframing you. Do consultations. I promise you'll get so much more out of them, and you'll get so many more bookings, and you'll have such a better understanding about who your favorite clients are and aren't, and how to navigate that conversation. Okay. And it will result in you getting more bookings faster. And then you can be pickier with your time again. You can have less consultations, or you can charge for your consultations, whatever. My point being is, guys, if you need bookings, lose the ego, talk to as many people as you can. It's a temporary thing, right, to fix a long-term problem. And the only way you get better at all these skills of sales is by actually having conversations. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about, which I'm going to film tomorrow because I'm dying here, is analyzing, improving your conversations. I'm going to show you some AIs you can use to add to your calls. I'm going to show you how you can review your DMs weekly. I'm going to show you how you can track your results and numbers, and how you can come up with the best answer for an objection when it arises and you didn't know what to do. So on that note, you'll see me in 2 seconds, but I will see you guys tomorrow. Okay, so continuing on with the final piece of this part of the sales course is analyzing and improving your conversations. So there's a couple of ways you can do this, which I'm going to go through in detail. I'm also going to show you the sheet again and how you can use that. And I'm also going to show you an AI you can attach to your Zoom consultations or your Google Meets consultations, depending on where you take them, that records the consultation, that gives you a detailed summary of the consultation, gives you a whole transcript, and also gives you feedback on how you did in terms of your communicative skills and your sales skills, etc. So the first thing I would love for you to do, especially if you're getting started with this, you're just generating leads through ads or through the content you've been making, or the automations, the DM automations I've helped you set up here throughout this course. What I want you to do is to review your Instagram DMs every week for 30 minutes. Okay, so you'll see here, spend 30 minutes every week reviewing your DM conversations. What I want you to do is review both the ones that converted, so they bought, and the ones that didn't. Okay, look for patterns, especially where conversations drop off. Is there something very specific that I do with the ones that end up booking? Is there certain conversations that I have? Is there certain questions that I ask? Is there a certain pattern to the behavior of these great clients? Okay, so you want to be able to figure out what you're doing really well and figure out what that is, so you can then bring that into your next conversations. Okay, so find the patterns between the good and the bad, and spend 30 minutes reviewing these conversations each week, right? And really try to find these patterns, because if you just do this 30 minutes a week, that compounds so much, I promise you. And of course, once you're booked out 2-3 months in advance, you don't have to be going crazy in your DMs. You can transition people to an email form or a website form, etc., and add more friction, as I've talked about before. Okay, but especially when you're starting out, the best thing you can do is talk to as many people as you can, and then also really sharpen up your skills here by doing this weekly DM reviews. Okay, so this is what I would look for if I'm doing these reviews. Okay, did I follow the ACA framework? Acknowledge, compliment, connect, right, relate, ask. I'm just going to change this to connect so it doesn't confuse anyone. Connect, ask. Did I uncover at least 2 of the 4 key pieces of information, right? Meaning, fear, fit, value, artist, fit. That should be as well. Just don't want to confuse anyone. Okay, so just seeing, like, did I, the ones that kind of fell off, were they a good client, and did I kind of turn it into interrogation? Was I a bit overkill? Could I have just booked the consultation a bit earlier? Just really figuring out, did I follow the nice framework? Was I acknowledging what they said? Was I connecting or complimenting them? And then was I asking a good question, follow-up question? And did I get some of the key pieces of information, which would, as I've mentioned before, simultaneously make you more knowledgeable about them and how to present yourself, and also make them feel heard and therefore trust you more than other people. Okay. Where did the conversation drop off? Was it after you gave the price? Was it after the questions, like, or during the questions? Was it after you tried to book them in? Like, figure out, okay, where is my weak spot, or where are most people falling off, because I need to figure out a better system for this type of for this part of the conversation. Okay, you want to look for similarities in the good and bad conversations. Does a certain question do me wonders, right? Is there a certain question you ask every time that's natural to you, that does wonders for you? Okay, is there a certain tone in the type of inquiries that end up ghosting? Also being able to pick up, okay, this person fits the bill of someone who's about to go, so let me try going down this different route, or let me move on, etc. And also, is there a certain tone to the type of inquiries that end up booking as well? Because if there is, and you're able to pick up on that from seeing patterns from reviewing these conversations every week, you can then know, okay, I should spend more time and give a little bit more effort to this particular conversation, because they are giving me all these signals of being a potential good client. Okay, so then once you pinpoint the good and bad similarities, try to figure out where they came from to see if there's a certain marketing message that is attracting good and bad inquiries. Okay, this is another thing too, is you'll see from the sheet I'll show you, but if certain bad inquiries are coming from a particular video from your ad, or a particular targeting from your ad, or targeting meaning like the location, or maybe it's certain type of content that keeps attracting people, then you want to figure out, okay, well, this type of content is attracting good people, these type of ads are attracting good people, and these aren't. So maybe I'll tone it down on this type of marketing because it's giving out the wrong message. Okay, so we'll get into that as well. You're also mainly looking for long-term ways on how you can stop good inquiries from slipping through the cracks. Okay, as I've mentioned before, being great at sales for you guys is not to try to book everyone under the sun in with you. It's to help you save these great clients that fall through the cracks, not turn these awful clients into an amazing client, right? So for example, let's say you have 10 messages, 3 are just naturally not a good fit, right? They, for a million reasons that we've already covered. Okay, 7 are a good fit. Okay, so 7 could be good potential clients. Out of those 7 people, you have great conversations with 5 of them, and then 2 people book in. Okay, so what we're looking for ways we can do, what we're looking for ways we can, number one, book more of those 5 great conversations in. So getting this from like 2 to 4. Also, figure out how we can have great conversations with all 7 good fits, right? So you can see out of 7 people, we had a great conversation with 5. So how can we have a great conversation with all 7? And then how can we book more than 2 out of those 7 in? That's what sales is for. These people, you don't want to spend too much time. You just want to leave them with a perspective shift. You want to leave them with a positive experience with you, because that always has a positive effect towards your reputation and brand, etc. Okay, so if you salvage even an extra booking from these small improvements over a year, that has an amazing compounding effect, right? So let me give you a modest example. So let's say you do 1 extra booking saved every 2 weeks from this 30-minute weekly review. Okay, so that would be 26 extra bookings a year. If each one of your clients' tattoos is worth $1,000, right? Some are more, some are less, and the average client returns 1.5 times over their lifetime. Now, if you're trying to attract ideal clients, that's going to be more. Once again, as I said, just a modest example, but you can see 26 by 1,000 by 1.5. Just by doing this 30-minute review and improving your sales a little bit and saving, a booking every 2 weeks, that's $39,000 in bookings from this alone within 1 year, right? And that's excluding any referrals, that's excluding any people who come more than 1.5 times. Okay, plus you keep this skill, so your conversation results only get better, resulting in more bookings with less inquiries needed. Okay, and also results in you being able to raise your prices sooner. This also results in you being able to raise your prices sooner. Okay, because if you have 10 inquiries and you're good enough at sales, right, and communication skills to close 6 out of 10 instead of 2 out of 10, then you can raise your prices because you have better skills to be able to present why you're worth that much. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is these two AIs you can attach to your online consultations. So Fathom AI is the first one if you're on Zoom, and then Firefly's AI if you're on Google Meets. Okay, and I'll show you how amazing these are. Let me just pause and pull up a video for you. So this is an example of Fathom AI, which is a extension, an AI you can put on your Zoom calls, which records it, gives you detailed notes. So me personally, I take all of my calls on Zoom. So this is what I use. Now there's another one as well called Fireflies.ai, which I think is specifically native to Google Meets. I know a lot of you guys use Google Meets, so I'll show you that as well. But as you can see here, I've just blurred out the details of this person just for privacy's sake. But you can see here, you can have the call recording. I could play that if I wanted to. It has the whole call. It's got a summary of what happened, and now it's also got different types of summary. So a chronological summary, a general summary, and then a sales summary, right? So unpacking the prospect's needs, challenges, and buying journey, and your skills on that. So you'll see here, it will give you everything. So the deal information. This is, for example, a sales call that I had with a tattoo artist for our full 6-month mentorship. So you can see prospect, the call, contact, seats, budget, and then their current state. Okay, so reliant on organic IG and TikTok and word of mouth. Recently hired a local vendor for a website and targeted Instagram ads. Audience growth has slowed. IG engagement skewed to other tattooers. TikTok teaching reaches non-tattooers better. Business model: low volume, high touch, multiple day projects. Many travel in. Consultations heavy. Calgary demand misaligned with her specialization. Pain points: burnout from extensive travel to stay home while maintaining more volume. Visibility and reach to the right niches. Buyers is insufficient. So it's just giving me all of the information that we covered on the call about what is this artist looking for? What are their biggest pain points? What are they struggling with, right? As you can see here, reluctant to influencer tactics, concerns about parasocial dynamics from oversharing personal life, which can complicate multi-day sessions. So we talked about that a lot. Also as well, for this person's specific style, they're very enmeshed in kind of geometric cultural tattoos. So Calgary market often underestimates, undervalues her advanced work, as you can see. Specific requirements: marketing approach that preserves branding integrity and focus on substance without personal oversharing or discount giveaways. Targeted reach to non-local high-fit avatars across cities, countries. Quality over quantity of followers. So it's talking about what they're really looking for in a mentorship, right? In teaching help. So structured, patient 3 to 6 month brand building with messaging that pre-qualifies clients who already get the value. Okay. Support to systemized content production and eventual delegation, editor assistant once winning points are defined. So we talked about really sharpening her brand, improving her content strategy and systems, and then finally as well helping her hire and train an editor or an assistant to remove her from some of the day-to-day business stuff. Okay. Then it's tech stack, objections, okay, that she might give to not buying. So as you can see, misalignment risk addressed by emphasizing custom one-on-one mentorship, blah, blah, blah. Main point is it gives you all of the details you need on the conversation, what the objections were, what the pain points are, what that client is really looking for, any bad experiences in the past, etc. And then it also gives you feedback on your quality of guiding that conversation down the bottom here as well. Okay, so main thing is this is a super valuable tool to have. It's called Fathom .ai. So if you just look up Fathom AI, like I am here, you can see it's right here, and you can just download it. You can add it as a Chrome extension, as you'll see. You can add it to your Zoom. Now the other one here, as you'll see, is Fireflies.ai. Fathom AI alternative, as you can see. It's good SEO. But you can see this one is mainly for Google Meets. So it's the exact same kind of layout system. You can watch this. So if you use Google Meets, go to fireflies.ai. If you use Zoom, fathom.ai. Super powerful thing that you can use. And yeah, it's going to give you so much context. The other thing as well is you can ask the Fathom recording anything. So like you could say like which part of the video did this person talk about their bad previous experiences with marketing. And what it will do is it will bring that up here, as you can see, and it will tell you exactly what their bad experiences were, right? As you can see, according to this transcript, they mentioned having a bad experience with marketing when they said, I tried once last year, and then the person that I hired helped me they were like really trying to push me in a direction. And I was like, it was a gray area. I was like, literally said, no, I'm not doing that. So you can see, and then if you click on this part, if you click on this timestamp, it will bring you straight to that part of the recording. I'm not going to do that just for privacy's sake, but my main point is this is a super valuable tool, and I highly recommend you do a couple of things. If I go back to the document now, okay? First of all, I recommend you rewatch the consultations, because it's so valuable. Yes, this will be torture, okay? Rewatching yourself and listening to yourself, etc. But that's the way, that's the uncomfortable thing you need to do to improve. Because what you need to do is you need to listen to your tonality. Do you sound confident or nervous when you talk or when you say the price, right? Throughout the call, are you making a statement or are you asking a question? You need to have more clarity. Sometimes we say something, and when you listen back, it's like, God, that didn't even sound like a question. That was supposed to be a question, okay? And you'll probably realize, oh my God, do I actually sound like that all the time? And then you can also pay attention to if you're overly jumpy and jittery, right? If you're not super calm, almost stoic on the call, do you think the client's going to be calm and stoic as well? No, they're already kind of excited and nervous. So if you're really super jumpy and jittery, it's going to rub off on them and they're going to feel very agitated as well, okay? Because you're going to instill that agitation in clients. So as uncomfortable as this will be to watch these videos, I highly recommend you watch all of them, especially for the first, couple of weeks, because it's going to show you your mannerisms, your tonality, your energy, all of this stuff. You can then calm down and kind of bring it more centered so that you are not instilling agitation in your clients too. And you'll see you probably talk really fast or you skip over things, or you'll also be able to pick up on their tonality and their body language. You're like, oh, when I said that, they actually seemed very hesitant about that. And I didn't see that on the call. And now I do. Okay. So also the AI note taker will point that out for you as well. Okay. So check your talk to listen ratio as well. A good sales call, right? A good consultation is 80% of them talking, 20% you. Okay. Most people think, oh, I need to go through my whole process and this and that. First, you need to build this discovery phase, right? All of these questions, get to know them more, figure out what objections would they potentially give you at the end for not buying. So the 20% is you presenting your process and how it's going to relate to them, etc. If you're talking more, you're not asking enough questions. Okay. So just figuring out what your talk to listen ratio is and saying, okay, I need to shut the fuck up a little bit more. Find your crutch words. Okay. Like, I'm really bad for this right now, but these all make you sound less confident. So just being aware of it will help you do it less. Review key moments. Go back to the exact moment they opened up or gave an objection. How did you handle it? Did you follow the framework? Did you explore further when they opened up? Did you sit in the uncomfortability when they were hesitant when you said the price? All of these type of things. For example, when they say, I've just been looking for the right artist, don't swiftly move on. Dig deeper. When you say the right artist, what are you looking for in an artist? So you know how to present yourself and process in the light they want, okay? So reading or watching back these calls is also going to allow you to pinpoint when someone says something very important that you should dig deeper on, right? If someone says, oh, I just had a bad experience in the past, or I've been looking for the right artist, or something along those lines, or you need to go down and dig deeper into that, into what they said, because if you don't, that's going to arise as an objection further down the line, right? Because if you don't know what they're looking for in the right artist, and then you present yourself in the opposite light because you didn't ask, then that's the objection you're going to get. So what this is called is when they say something like this and you spend 5 minutes just going down that rabbit hole on the call and helping make sure that you reframe the perspective on it. So for example, I got, really hurt by an artist in the past and I'm really scared. You help them overcome that so that when the time comes and you drop the price, that's not going to be an objection that they give you. Okay, so that's overcoming objections before the close, because the main thing you have to understand is before you drop the price, you're in control, right? It's much easier to help them overcome objections or misconceptions or beliefs that they have. Once you drop the price, it's super intense, right? Because they're nervous, they're scared, it's fight or flight defensive mode. And it's going to be much harder to overcome an objection there because the ball's kind of in their court, if that makes sense. So if you can pick up on these little cues of something that might be a problem or an issue or a reason that they might not commit due to a lack of trust or bad experience, you want to kind of go down that rabbit hole right then and there in order to make the buying process easier towards the end of the call. Okay. So the other thing I would love you to do is to track your objections and frequently asked questions for data. Okay. So as I've shown you before in the ads course, you have this sheet. So here, as we've mentioned before, I'm just going to move myself up here. Here is where you put the ad spend, initial messages, replies, consults, books, sales. And this is where you put in the data of, so these two things is where you put in the data of your consultations and tattoo sessions. Let me just move myself over down here. Okay, so the blue in here is before the consultation and the green is after the consultation. The reason we want to put all of this in is because each piece of data gives us an insight into what could have gone wrong with that conversation. Okay, so you put their name. So this is what you put in here is all the consultations that you book. So name John, from where they came from, word of mouth or meta ads or organic content or Google ads, whatever. Okay, the reason we do that is because you might see that all the people that book and buy are coming from the same place, and you might see the people that all no show or don't buy are coming from the same place. So that gives you a pattern. Okay, then these two things, the appointment date and the date that they booked. The reason for this is you'll also see if you book people too far out for a consultation, there's a higher chance of them no showing. So if you put in the appointment date, so for example, let's say you've booked me in for a consultation next Friday. So right now it's the 29th of January, so next Friday. And you booked me in today, so the 29th of January. You'll see that, okay, that's an 8-day difference. And then if I don't show up and you can see all these other people showed up and you booked me in for tomorrow or the next day, it's quite clear to you, okay, when I book anyone in more than 5 days, 6 days, 7 days out, there's a significantly higher chance that they don't show up. Therefore, I'm going to have a rule where I only book consultations 3 or 4 days out max to maximize the chances I have of them showing up. Okay. Also, then, did they confirm their appointment? If you sent a a reminder message, did they reply to that? Because if they didn't and then they didn't show up, you know that you have to have better systems for that. Did they reschedule or cancel? And then any additional notes on that person. So these are just additional notes from the DM. Okay, I'm getting the sense that they're this, they're that. I'm excited for this. I think this might be a problem, whatever. You're just adding the notes there as you book them in. So we can go back and look at them after the consultation. Okay, so then the green is after the actual consultation happened. So did they show up? Yes or no? How was the consult, right? And you can edit these for yourself as well. What you're going to do is you're going to go file, make a copy here. Okay, this sheet is linked in the description. So how was the consult? Tattoo booked, pricing issue, we'll book in the future, we'll return. You can also edit these, okay? Then tattoo appointment date. So what if they did book, what date is the appointment booked for? What was the amount of the deposit you received? What day did you receive the deposit, right? What was the date? Because if you're not receiving any deposits on your sales calls, like your Zoom consultations, what that means is you are not uncomfortable enough you're not comfortable enough with sitting in the uncomfortability of people squirming when you drop the price. And what you're doing is you're kind of giving them an opening. Oh, it's okay if you book later, don't worry. That's just you avoiding the tough conversation that's about to arise. And of course, what's happening is you're getting lucky and some people are coming back, which is okay. But there's a lot of people that you're losing the sale on because you're not willing to sit in that uncomfortability. So that's what that dictates. If I'm looking at these stats, it's like if none of your deposits are being received on the call, it's that you're not comfortable enough yet with just having the hard conversations sometimes. Once again, the tension is not between you and them, it's between themselves. Then obviously the total tattoo value, and then later on, did they show for the tattoo, and then any notes on that person too. What this will do is it will give us extreme data on all the parts of the sales process of each person, which will mean that we'll be able to find patterns significantly easier. right? In terms of the good and the bad people, where they came from. Did I book them out too far? Did they confirm their appointment? Did any of them reschedule or cancel? What happened in the consultation? When did I get the deposit amount? How big was the tattoo worth? And then any additional notes, okay? So what I highly recommend for you guys to do, this will also give you your closing data, your stats as well, like your no-show rate, close rate, etc. Fill this out for every single consultation that you book, and then tattoo. If you book someone in straight away from a from a DM, then you don't need to put it in here. What we're trying to improve here is our sales skills and system. Then the last thing then is when you get an FAQ or an objection, what you're going to do is you're going to write it here, and then you're going to write the answer that you gave to them. And then what you can do is go back, review the answer over time and improve it. So for example, let's say it's too expensive. Let's say someone says it's too expensive. And then you write whatever your answer was there. Okay. Then you go back and you review it and you watch this video again and you're thinking, okay, I definitely could have said this better. This is what I would do next time. What you do then is you want to update this answer with your new answer that you would do. Okay. And then let's say you use that a couple of times. You're like, okay, this works really, really well. Then what happens is you're like, okay, this is a great answer I'm going to have for this. I'm going to use this every time that arises. So you learn that and you're like, okay, if someone says it's too expensive, I know which direction I should take the conversation. And what happens is two things. Number one, you build a stack of objections and FAQs, and you build a stack of great answers. Once again, if you want help improving those answers, you can always just DM me as well. Say, hey, I keep getting this. This is what I'm saying, but it's not working. What should I do? Okay. And then secondly, as well, though, all of these questions and answers are content ideas, because if you keep getting the same objections and FAQs and reasons that people are hesitant to buying, then we want to be able to answer that question at scale, meaning that we don't want to have to do it one by one every time. So the best thing we can do is we can make content that addresses that question in some way, shape, or form that is on brand with you, right? What that will do then is if someone is thinking about this and then they see that video, they are now not thinking about this anymore. That is not an objection because they understand, because the video has answered the question rather than you one-on-one every time. And then when they reach out, they're a better client because their sales call is easier because they have less objections. Does that make sense? So number one, you're building like a template, a library of templates to use when you keep getting the same questions. Okay, this is the best way to answer this. And then you get very used to navigating those conversations. And that's how you get more and more comfortable with this uncomfortability, right? When someone's like, oh, it's too expensive. And then secondly, these are all ideas for content, for marketing content. Because if you can answer the questions in the marketing, it's going to make your sales conversation easier, which means you'll get more bookings, which means you'll get more feedback from clients, and it's a flywheel, right? And vice versa. So if we go back here, yeah, that's everything. Okay. So the most common questions and objections are great ideas for conversation pillar social media content. Conversion pillar social media content, right? These are the exact things that you should be talking about in conversion content. And then, as I mentioned before, remember, marketing and sales is one entity. So use this flywheel method of having conversations, figuring out what the objections are, figuring out what the best answer is, overcoming these objections, making marketing content on that, getting more sales conversations because you're making conversion content. And the conversion content is making your job easier in the conversation, in the Zoom. And it goes around and around. Okay. So that in essence, guys, is a quick crash course. Not quick, but that is everything you need for now on sales and marketing to get booked out as a tattoo artist. And that is a fucking wrap. 13 hours. You made it to the end. Congratulations. You now know more about the actual business of being a successful tattoo artist online than 99% of the artists out there. I'm going to recap everything we covered and learned together over the last 13 hours. But first, take a second and appreciate what you've just accomplished. You've given yourself a complete MBA level education in tattoo marketing. You should be incredibly proud of yourself. I promise you, most people won't even get an hour into this video. All that's left now is for you to actually do the work. Think about where you were before you started watching this video. You're probably feeling a little frustrated, a little lost, probably tired of being a marketer or feeling like an influencer, when all you wanted to do was be an artist. But now you have a new path forward with this video, a strategy that actually works for you as an artist. I really hope this free course has given you some clarity and some newfound hope and direction for your career this year. So what are the next steps? Where should you go from here? First, let's recap everything that we covered and learned together over the last 13 hours to make sure you remember all of the steps and why they are so important together. First, we mapped out the entire tattoo artist marketing funnel and map, the literal step-by-step journey a complete stranger takes to becoming your paying client, and how everything you do is connected. Then we broke down the cognitive biases in human psychology that affect judgments and decision-making, and how you can use this understanding of human psychology and human nature to make your marketing more persuasive. With that foundation, we then covered the 4 content pillars, the 4 types of content you should make and the purpose of each one. Then we broke down the psychology and principles of branding, and how to use your unique artistic perspective and persona to stand out online. You learned that your brand isn't a logo, it's an association with a feeling. So you now know how to use your perspective and your art to make a brand that is unique. Then we got clear on who you need to speak to in your marketing. We did a full breakdown of ideal clients and why it is paramount you focus on attracting these people over everyone else. Then we studied how to create your own unique tattoo style using Oscar Kermo's process. And then we translated those lessons into finding and creating your own unique content style too. Then we got practical. We covered how to research content for initial inspiration using your brand identity and ideal client keywords. You now have a system for finding endless content ideas that match perfectly with your brand, so you never have to worry about what to post again. And then we showed you how to build all of this. We broke down the structure of a great Instagram reel, and then how to go back and create all 4 types of content pillars. Now that you actually know what your content and brand should look and feel like. But creating content is useless if you don't know what's working. So I showed you how to read the analytics of your posts so you understand how to test and improve your content. Now you can look at your Reels data like a scientist, understand what your audience is telling you, and make intelligent data-backed decisions to improve your results over time. Then I showed you how to take all of this new attention and naturally turn it into sales conversations using what's called conversion mechanisms. You learned how to use your stories, your profile, your content, and automations to seamlessly transition people from viewer to inquiry. And then finally, we brought out the big guns. You got 2 full 3+ hour masterclasses. The first on how to run paid ads as a tattoo artist. Not just boosting posts, the entire advanced system. The psychology of a winning ad. Setting up your campaigns in the ads manager like a pro. Creating ad content and creative that actually works. And tracking and improving your results properly to make data-driven decisions moving forward. And finally, we broke down over 3.5 hours, in my opinion, the most important skill in business. Sales and communication mastery. We did a full sales and client communication masterclass to understand the psychology of persuasion. You learned how to turn more inquiries into bookings, handle objections, and communicate your value, all without feeling unethical or salesy. You learned how to sell by serving others. And now you have the complete system, the entire tattoo marketing playbook. So where should you go from here? Here's what I want you to do right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. First, if you haven't already, download the workbook linked in the description. This is where you'll translate the ideas from this course into your actual personal plan. It's a beautiful resource that allows you to follow this course step by step and put it into action as you go through. And do all of it, every exercise. This is how you win. Do not skip this. If you just watch the course without doing anything, go back now, watch the course again and do the workbook. Otherwise, you will have learned nothing. Second, then revisit your brand identity module notes. Then perform an audit of your existing online presence. Does it align with the brand you defined? If not, identify the 3 biggest points of misalignment. This is your start. It will tell you where the work needs to be done and where your brand is unclear, so you can start making great content. Third, ask yourself, what are 3 small things I could do right now to start building momentum? To actually make some progress now without feeling overwhelmed, pick 3 small, easy wins. Maybe it's updating your profile and bio to reflect your new brand identity and give clarity to your viewer. Maybe it's making one connection storytelling reel you have an idea for, just to get into the habit of it. Or maybe it's setting up the ManyChat automation that DMs every new follower just to get you talking to more people. Anyway, pick 3 small tasks to do. These small wins build the confidence you need to tackle the bigger challenges in this course. And finally, remember why you became an artist. You became an artist because you have something inside of you that needs to be expressed. And somewhere along the way, the pressure of being a marketer or an influencer might have quieted that feeling, but it's still there. So the whole point is this marketing course wasn't here to tell you to change who you are. It's actually to give you the strategy to show who you are even more. Now you have everything you need to build a marketing system and business that not only supports you financially, but also fulfills you creatively. And I know your dream tattoo career might feel so far away from you right now, but I promise you, it's actually so much closer than you think. Especially if you went through and did this whole course. You're so much further ahead of other artists right now after this, but you have to put in the fucking work. Because no one is coming to save you. Your success is your responsibility. And I hope this free course gives you the clarity and motivation to keep moving forward. And to reward the people who understand this, the people who actually take all the information and put in the work, I'm going to give away something huge. I'm giving away a full month of one-on-one mentorship with me and the team for free. 4 private calls and daily conversations where we will work together on your marketing system and business. I will be your personal coach to guarantee you implement this system correctly. So here's how you can win this free mentorship. Take what you've learned here and apply it, and then show me the best results you've gotten from this course. DM me on Instagram @AureliusGrow and show me the results you've gotten and the steps you've taken. It could be anything, your new bio, your new content, your new numbers. Show me your best results. Show me that you're an action taker. I will personally review the entries, and the person with the most impressive transformation will win the one-on-one mentorship. And for anyone else who sends and shows me a huge transformation, even if you don't win the mentorship, you will win a one-on-one call with me too to build your long-term strategy. I want to reward everyone who puts in the work with no excuses. So put in the work, send me your results on Instagram, and you'll at least get a free one-on-one call with me. And remember, this course is just the beginning. It's to get you to branding level 2, if you remember. And the reason you needed to watch this whole course in the first place is because you lack a strong, unique brand. So if you are a tattoo artist who wants to build a global recognizable brand, there are 2 ways you can work closer with us, the C23 Labs team, to get you there. The first way is by purchasing our full 30-hour social media course and being added into our private artist community. If you thought this free course was good, this free course was just 13 hours of a full 30-hour social media course that goes into extreme depth on every single topic, with even more advanced modules on psychology, a full in-depth course on finding your unique artistic identity from our mentor and tattoo artist Laura or Linear Noir, a full in-depth course on creating your brand identity and visuals from Lalo, way more in-depth videos on photography and videography techniques, photography and video editing, and much more. And more business-related videos, like building business systems, time management, and so much more. You'll also be invited into our private artist community, where you will be connected with other like-minded artists that are also working on their social media brand. You can ask questions, see what's been working for other tattoo artists, and watch replays of our monthly marketing masterclasses that me and Lalo do with our mentorship students live. So if you like this course and you want more information but to learn at your own pace, this is the best option for you. Click the course link in the description to learn more about the course. But if you're really serious about transforming your brand this year and want to work one-on-one with me and all the mentors, you can apply to join our 6-month social media mentorship program. This is our highest level program. You don't just get another course, you get the whole team. We will plan and create your content strategy for you, set up and create your paid ads for you too if needed. You'll work directly with me one-on-one to build your marketing funnel, create your content strategy, master your communication skills, and build your business systems. You'll work with Laura or Linear Noir, a fantastic tattoo artist herself, to uncover your unique artistic identity and break through the artistic mindset blocks that are holding you back. And you'll work with Lalo, our branding and photography expert, to ensure your brand visuals, your photography, and your videography is world class. Eventually too, we even help you find, interview, and hire your first personal assistant, your first editor, once you're at that point in your business. We basically build your entire brand and business with you side by side for 6 months. So if you're really serious about taking your tattoo career to the next level this year, click the first link in the description below, apply for a mentorship program, and we'll be in contact with you very soon. Once again, thank you so much for trusting me with your time and watching this course. I really put my soul into this course, and I made it free because I want to give every artist out there a chance to succeed, no matter what your circumstance is. So go out there now,